Nice body for an old lady. The words hit Victoria Brennan like a slap, but she didn't flinch. Didn't turn around. Just kept her eyes on the disassembled sniper rifle lying on the table in front of her. 20 years in the Navy had taught her that the most dangerous enemies weren't the ones shooting at you. They were the ones who smiled while they destroyed your career, your reputation, your life. The three men behind her were laughing now, thinking they'd already won. They had no idea what was coming. Before we dive into Vic's story, hit that subscribe button and stay with us until the end. Drop a comment with your city so we can see how far this story travels. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The fluorescent lights in Blackstone Security Solutions Evaluation Center hummed with that particular frequency that promised a headache by noon. Victoria Brennan had been sitting in the waiting area for 47 minutes, watching young men in tactical gear strut through the facility like they owned the place. Maybe they did. This was their world after all. Young, aggressive, absolutely certain of their superiority. She checked her watch. 0847 hours. They'd told her to arrive at 0800 sharp. Military precision, they'd said in the email. She'd arrived at 0755, 15 minutes early, the way she'd been trained, the way she'd lived for 2 decades. The receptionist, a woman maybe 30 years old with perfectly manicured nails and a smile that never reached her eyes, had barely looked up when Vic checked in. Take a seat. They'll call you when they're ready. That was 47 minutes ago. Vic didn't mind waiting. She'd waited in worse places. Desert observation posts where the sun could kill you. Frozen mountainsides where staying still meant staying alive. Hospital rooms where doctors used words like extensive damage and career-ending injury. This was nothing. The door to the main facility opened and 3 men emerged. The first was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that came from protein shakes and gym memberships. Mid-20s clean-cut, wearing tactical pants and a company polo that stretched across his chest. His name tag read Marcus, Senior Instructor. Behind him came a shorter man, stockier, with a neck like a fire hydrant and forearms covered in tattoos. Chad, Tactical Coordinator. He was chewing gum, popping it between his teeth with rhythmic precision. The third was younger, maybe 26, with the eager eyes of someone still trying to prove himself. Jake, Operations Specialist. He carried a tablet and kept glancing at it like it held the secrets of the universe. Marcus scanned the waiting room, his eyes passing over Vic without stopping. He looked at the receptionist. Where's the 0800 evaluation, Victoria? Brennan. The receptionist nodded toward Vic. Marcus's eyes swung back, landed on her, and his expression shifted through several gears. Surprise. Confusion. Something that might have been amusement. You're Victoria Brennan. Vic stood, extending her hand. I am. You must be Marcus. He took her hand, his grip firm, but not aggressive. Testing her, maybe. She matched his pressure exactly, neither yielding nor challenging. Right, yeah. Sorry we were expecting. He trailed off. Someone younger, Vic offered, her voice pleasant neutral. Someone different. Marcus released her hand, exchanged a glance with Chad. Something passed between them, wordless, the kind of communication that came from working together too long. Well, okay then. You ready to get started? I've been ready since 0755. Chad snorted. Punctual. That's good. We like punctual. They led her through a security door, down a corridor lined with photos of operators in full tactical gear. Faces blurred for operational security. The facility smelled like gun oil and testosterone. So, Marcus said, walking slightly ahead, your application says you're looking for an instructor position, teaching firearms to private military contractors. That's correct. And your background is Navy, 20 years, retired as a chief warrant officer. Jake, scrolling through his tablet, spoke up. Says here you were an instructor, marksmanship training. Among other things. They reached a classroom standard military setup, rows of tables, whiteboard at the front, posters showing proper weapons, handling techniques. Marcus gestured for Vic to take a seat. The three men remained standing, forming a loose semicircle around her. It was an interrogation position. Maybe they didn't realize it. Maybe they did. Okay, so here's the deal. Marcus began, leaning against a table. Blackstone Security Solutions is a premier provider of tactical training and security services. We work with high net worth individuals, corporate clients, and government contracts. Our instructors need to be top tier, best of the best. I understand. Our clients are mostly former military, SEALs, Rangers Force Recon. They've been in the shit. They don't have patience for theoretical knowledge. Vic met his eyes. Neither do I. Chad cracked his gum. No offense, ma'am, but our operators are young, aggressive, and they respond to instructors who can match their intensity. This isn't teaching suburban moms how to shoot at a range. I'm aware of what the job entails. Are you... Marcus's tone shifted slightly, edge creeping in. Because I'm looking at your file here and I'm seeing Navy instructor, which could mean a lot of things. Could mean you taught classroom theory. Could mean you ran range safety while other people did the real work. Vic's expression didn't change. Is there a question in there? Jake, trying to smooth things over, jumped in. What Marcus is asking is, what's your actual field experience? Have you been deployed combat zones? Yes. Where? That's classified. Chad laughed. Classified, right. So you can't tell us or you won't tell us? Both. The three men exchanged looks again. Marcus straightened up, crossed his arms. Look, Ms. Brennan. Chief Brennan. Chief Brennan, we're not trying to be difficult here, but we need to know what we're working with. This job pays $180,000 a year because we need people who can do things most people can't do. If you can't even tell us about your background. My clearance level is TS-SCI. Vic interrupted, her voice, still calm, still pleasant. I've been read into programs that don't have names. I've trained personnel for missions that never officially happened in countries we're not officially operating in. If you need verification, call the Navy Special Warfare Development Group. Ask for Commander Sullivan. He'll confirm what he's authorized to confirm. Silence. Marcus uncrossed his arms. You're saying you worked with DevGru. I'm saying call Commander Sullivan. Chad's gum chewing slowed. Jake was typing rapidly on his tablet. Okay, Marcus said after a moment. Okay. Let's say that's all true. Let's say you've got a background we can't verify because it's classified. That still doesn't tell us if you can do this job now. You're what, 50? 52. Right. 52. Our operators are running obstacle courses, doing building entries, working in high-stress environments. Can you keep up with that? There's one way to find out. Marcus smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Yeah, there is. You up for a practical evaluation? That's why I'm here. Good. Because talk is cheap. We need to see what you can actually do. They moved to another part of the facility, an indoor range with multiple firing lanes and an adjacent obstacle course that looked like it had been designed by someone who hated the human body. Rope climbs, wall vaults, crawl sections, tire runs. A handful of younger instructors were running drills with clients, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing in the enclosed space. Marcus led her to a table where various firearms were laid out. AR-15 variants, Glock handguns, a Remington 870 shotgun. Standard qualification, he said. We'll start with the written test. Basic firearms knowledge, safety protocols, legal considerations. Should take about 30 minutes. Then we'll move to physical assessment, then live fire. Fine. The written test was exactly what she expected. Questions about muzzle awareness, trigger discipline clearing, malfunctions, use of force continuum. She finished in 18 minutes. Marcus checked her answers, his expression neutral. Perfect score. Is that unusual? For someone your age who's been out of service? Yeah, a little. Vic didn't respond. All right. Physical assessment, obstacle course. You need to complete it in under 8 minutes to qualify. What's the record? Chad grinned. 4 minutes, 32 seconds. Marcus holds it. I'm not trying to break records. I'm trying to pass. The course was brutal, deliberately so. They wanted to see her fail. Vic approached the first obstacle, a series of walls increasing in height. She didn't try to vault them like the younger operators were doing. Instead, she used technique, placing her hands precisely using her legs for leverage, conserving energy. The rope climb was harder. Her shoulders damaged from that IED and Mosul protested immediately. She felt the scar tissue pulling the dull ache that had become a permanent companion. She climbed anyway. Behind her, she could hear Chad and Jake talking. She's slow. Give her credit, she's not quitting. Yeah, but slow doesn't cut it in the field. Vic reached the top of the rope, touched the bell, descended, moved to the next obstacle. The crawl section was razor wire strung 18 inches above muddy ground. She dropped, moved through it with practiced efficiency. Her knees would hurt tomorrow. They hurt now. Didn't matter. At the tire run, she focused on breathing on rhythm, on not thinking about the pain radiating through her lower back. 6 minutes, 43 seconds. She crossed the finish line, breathing hard but controlled. Marcus was looking at his stopwatch. 6:43, not bad, for someone your age. Vic straightened, wiped mud from her face. What's the minimum passing time? 8 minutes. Then I passed. Barely. Passing is passing. Chad stepped forward. Okay, so you can run an obstacle course. Let's see how you shoot. The firearms qualification was where Vic started to see their attitude shift. She ran the Glock course first. Multiple targets, varying distances, reload drills, malfunction clearances. She shot clean, fast, efficient. Every round in the A zone. Jake was checking targets. That's expert level. I know. The AR-15 qualification was similar. She ran multiple drills, transition drills, strong hand only, weak hand only. Every shot exactly where it needed to be. Marcus was watching now, his casual dismissiveness replaced by something more focused. You shoot like someone who's done this a lot. I have. Navy doesn't usually produce shooters this good, not in instructor roles. Vic ejected the magazine, cleared the rifle, set it down. Then maybe I wasn't in a usual instructor role. Chad was scrolling through his phone. I'm looking at your file again. It says you were stationed at Little Creek. That's East Coast SEAL training, among other places. What did you teach? Marksmanship, advanced tactics, specialized skills. To who? People who needed to know those skills. Jake looked up from his tablet. Commander Sullivan. You said to call him. Is he SEAL? Yes. Did you train him? His platoon, 2004. The three men went silent. Marcus finally spoke. You're saying you trained SEALs. I'm saying I was a Navy instructor assigned to Naval Special Warfare units. What exactly I trained and who exactly I trained is classified. But if you call Commander Sullivan, he'll verify my credentials within the parameters of what he's allowed to discuss. Chad's gum had stopped moving. Women weren't in combat roles back then. You're right. They weren't, officially. Another silence. Then Marcus smiled, but it was different now. Harder. More competitive. Okay, Chief Brennan. You can shoot, you can run an obstacle course, you can pass written tests. That's all good. That's all necessary. But we need to see something more. What more? We need to see if you can handle the weapons our clients actually use, not basic platforms. Specialized equipment. He gestured to Jake, who moved to a locked cabinet and began entering a combination. Our top-tier clients, Marcus continued, they're not carrying Glocks and AR-15s. They're using equipment most people never see. Equipment that requires extensive training, extensive experience. We need instructors who can teach on that equipment, who can demonstrate it, who can troubleshoot it in the field. Jake opened the cabinet, pulled out a hard case, carried it to the table. He set it down with reverence. Marcus looked at Vic. You familiar with the MK13 Mod 7? Vic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, just for a second. Yes. Good, because this is the real test. He opened the case. Inside, partially disassembled, was a sniper rifle system that most civilians would never even photograph, let alone touch. The MK13 Mod 7. The primary sniper weapon system used by Naval Special Warfare units. Chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum, effective range beyond 1,000 meters. Utilized by SEAL snipers in some of the most demanding operations in modern warfare. It was broken down into components, the barrel separated from the action, the scope removed, the stock detached. Marcus gestured to it. If you're going to teach our Tier 1 clients, you need to know their weapon systems, inside and out. Can you assemble this rifle? Vic looked at the weapon. Yes. How long do you need? The question hung in the air. Behind Marcus, Chad was grinning. Come on, man, be realistic. Just assemble it normally. You've got 10 minutes. Jake pulled out his phone, opened the timer app. 10 minutes. That's generous. Vic stepped up to the table, looked down at the disassembled rifle. She could feel all three men watching her, waiting for her to fail, waiting for her to admit she was out of her depth. She rolled up her sleeves. The scar on her left forearm was visible now, a long surgical line running from her wrist almost to her elbow. The kind of scar that came from serious trauma, from surgery, that took hours, from rehabilitation that took months. Chad noticed it. That looks nasty. Training accident. Something like that. Vic flexed her hand, testing the range of motion. The nerves had been damaged, repaired, retrained. She'd been told she might never shoot again. She'd proven them wrong. She looked at Marcus. 10 minutes. Yeah. Think you can do it? Vic's voice was quiet, calm, absolutely certain. I only need 3. Marcus laughed. 3 minutes to assemble a MK-13 from parts, Chief. I don't mean to doubt you, but our best guys take 5-6 minutes. This isn't a basic weapon system. I know what it is. Then you know 3 minutes is impossible. Start the timer. Jake, still grinning, tapped his phone. Timer started. Good luck. Vic's hands moved to the rifle components, and everything changed. Her fingers found the barrel assembly, checked the chamber with automatic precision, aligned the locking lugs. No hesitation, no fumbling. Every movement was deliberate, practiced the muscle memory of someone who'd done this hundreds, maybe thousands of times. She fitted the barrel to the action, the metal sliding into place with a satisfying click. Her hands were already moving to the bolt assembly, checking the firing pin, ensuring the extractor was properly seated. Chad's grin was fading. Wait, she's actually... Shh. Marcus was watching now. Really watching. The stock came next. Vic aligned it, secured the action screws with exact torque. Not too tight, not too loose. Just right. The way it needed to be for accuracy, for reliability. The scope mount, the rings, the optic itself, a high-end loophole that cost more than most people's monthly salary. She positioned it with care, checked the eye. Relief tightened the screws in the proper sequence. Jesus, Jake whispered. She's not even looking at the parts. She's doing it by feel. Vic attached the bipod, checked the tension on the legs, folded them, unfolded them. Tested the Harris swivel mechanism. Magazine well. Trigger assembly. Safety selector. Her hands moved like a surgeon's, precise and confident. At 2 minutes 15 seconds, she performed a functions check. Bolt operation smooth. Trigger brake clean. Safety engaging and disengaging properly. At 2 minutes 30 seconds, she set the rifle down on the table, stepped back. Done. Silence. Marcus moved forward, picked up the rifle, began checking it. The assembly. The headspace. The torque on the action screws. The scope mounting. His face had gone from amused to confused to something that might have been respect. It's perfect, he said quietly. Every component. Perfect assembly. Jake was staring at his phone. 2 minutes 47 seconds. Chad wasn't chewing his gum anymore. That's not possible. Nobody assembles a MK-13 that fast. Nobody. Vic met his eyes. SEAL snipers do, when they've practiced it enough, when they've done it in the dark under fire, when their lives depend on it. But you're not a SEAL sniper. No, I'm not. She paused. I'm the person who trained them. The words fell into the room like a grenade. Marcus set the rifle down very carefully. You trained SEAL snipers. Among others. To do what? To stay alive. To complete missions. To come home. Jake was scrolling frantically through his tablet. This doesn't make sense. Women weren't in combat roles. Women weren't training special operations. Officially, Vic said. Women weren't doing a lot of things officially. But missions don't care about regulations. When SEAL teams needed advanced sniper training, when they needed someone who could teach them techniques that weren't in the manual, someone who could help them solve problems that didn't have textbook solutions, they didn't care if the instructor was male or female. They cared if the instructor could deliver results. Chad found his voice. So what were you? Some kind of civilian contractor? No, I was Navy, active duty. I just wasn't in a role that was supposed to exist. Marcus was still processing. You assembled that rifle in under 3 minutes. Yes. You know what the record is for SEAL snipers in training. 3 minutes, 12 seconds. Last time I checked. You just beat it. I said it. 2006. Camp Pendleton. It hasn't been broken because I taught everyone who came after me to aim for 315. Good enough is good enough. Chasing records gets people killed. The 3 men were staring at her now with completely different eyes. Jake spoke first, his voice uncertain. Who are you really? Vic looked at him, and for the first time there was something in her expression that wasn't calm, wasn't neutral. It was something harder, older, earned through years of experience these boys couldn't imagine. I'm someone who spent 20 years doing things I can't talk about, training people for missions I can't acknowledge in places that officially don't exist. I'm someone who's been shot, blown up, and told I'd never work again. I'm someone who proved them wrong. She paused. And I'm someone who came here for a reason that has nothing to do with a job. Marcus's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you've been under Department of Defense investigation for the past 3 months. Title IX violations, discrimination against female contractors, hostile work environment, multiple complaints from qualified women who were rejected, harassed, or driven out. The color drained from Chad's face. That's not... I'm talking about the fact that I'm not here for an interview. I'm here on behalf of the DoD Inspector General's office. I'm here to evaluate whether the allegations against Blackstone Security Solutions are substantiated. Vic's voice was still calm, still professional, but now there was steel underneath. And watching how you treated me for the past 2 hours, the dismissive comments, the condescending attitude, the assumption that I couldn't possibly be qualified because of my age and gender, you just gave me everything I needed. Jake dropped his phone. It clattered on the concrete floor. Marcus was shaking his head. You recorded us. This was a setup. This was an evaluation. A fair one. I showed up with legitimate credentials, demonstrated superior skills, and was still treated like I didn't belong. She gestured to her shirt. Body camera. Running since I walked in the door. Every word, every smirk. Every nice body for an old lady comment that you thought I didn't hear. Chad's voice was hoarse. We're screwed. We're completely screwed. That depends, Vic said. On what? On whether you're part of the problem or part of the solution. On whether you're willing to testify about what really happens here. On whether you've got the courage to do the right thing when it costs you something. Marcus was breathing hard, his mind clearly racing. If we cooperate, what happens to us? That's not my call. But I can tell you what happens if you don't cooperate. Federal charges. Conspiracy to defraud the government if Blackstone's been billing for qualified instructors who aren't actually qualified. Violation of federal employment laws. Possible criminal charges, depending on what else we find. Silence. Then Jake, the youngest one, spoke. His voice was quiet, ashamed. There are others. Women who tried to get positions here. Qualified women. Veterans. They were rejected. Or they were hired and then pushed out. Tell me about them. I don't know all the names, but there were at least 6 in the past year. Maybe more. The company, the executives said they weren't cultural fits, that the clients wouldn't respond well to female instructors, that it would create complications. Vic pulled out a card, handed it to Jake. Department of Defense hotline. You call that number, ask for Agent Morris and tell her you spoke with Chief Brennan. She'll take your statement. Marcus was staring at the floor. We're not the bad guys here. We're just trying to do our jobs. I know. Vic said, and there was something almost gentle in her voice now. That's the problem with systems like this. They don't need villains. They just need good people who are too scared to speak up, who are too invested in the status quo to question it, who convince themselves that this is just how things are. So what now? Chad asked. Now you make a choice. You can protect a system that's broken, or you can help fix it. You can keep your heads down and hope this blows over, or you can stand up and do something that actually matters. Marcus looked up, met her eyes. And you, what do you get out of this? Vic smiled, but it was sad. I get to make sure the women coming after me don't have to go through what I went through. I get to make sure that when a qualified veteran applies for a job, she's judged on her skills, not her gender. I get to make sure that the military I served for 20 years actually lives up to the values it claims to represent. She picked up the Mech-13, began disassembling it with the same casual competence she'd shown assembling it. You've got 48 hours to decide, she said, not looking at them, focused on the rifle. After that, the investigation moves forward with or without your cooperation. Choose wisely. She finished disassembling the rifle, placed the components back in the case exactly as she'd found them, closed the lid. Then she walked out, leaving 3 men standing in stunned silence. Their world irrevocably changed, their choices laid out in front of them like weapons they weren't sure how to use. The door closed behind her. For a long moment, none of them moved. Then Marcus pulled out his phone, stared at it, and made a decision that would define everything that came next. Marcus stared at his phone for exactly 30 seconds before he dialed. The call connected on the second ring. Commander Sullivan. Marcus's throat went dry. Commander, this is Marcus Chen, senior instructor at Blackstone Security Solutions. I need to verify some information about a former Navy instructor, Victoria Brennan. There was a pause. Then Sullivan's voice came back, different now. Careful. What's your security clearance level, Mr. Chen? I don't have one. I'm civilian. Former Army Ranger, but I've been out for 6 years. Then I can't discuss Chief Brennan's service record with you. I understand that, sir. But I need to know if she actually worked with SEAL teams, if she actually trained snipers, because she just assembled a Mech-13 in under 3 minutes, and now she's telling me she's here on behalf of DOD Inspector General. Another pause, longer this time. Chief Brennan is who she says she is, Sullivan said finally. And if she told you she's there in an official capacity, I'd suggest you cooperate fully. Is there anything else? Sir, did you actually train under her? Mr. Chen, I'm going to tell you something off the record. Victoria Brennan saved my life in Ramadi. She saved the lives of 4 men in my platoon. She did things I'm not authorized to discuss with people who don't need to know. And she did them all while fighting a Navy that didn't want to admit women like her existed. Sullivan's voice hardened. So yes, she trained me. She trained a lot of us. And every man she trained came home better prepared to survive than they would have been without her. That's all I can say. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone, looked at Chad and Jake. We're calling that DOD number, he said. Right now. Chad was pale. Marcus, if we cooperate, we're done here. Blackstone will fire us. We'll be blacklisted from every security contractor in the industry. And if we don't cooperate, we'll be federal defendants. I'm not going to prison for a company that doesn't give a damn about us. Jake was already pulling out the card Vic had given him. She said, ask for Agent Morrison. The call took 40 minutes. Agent Morrison was professional, thorough, and absolutely unsympathetic to their situation. She took their statements separately, recorded everything, and promised someone would be in touch within 24 hours. When they finally hung up, it was past 1900 hours. The facility was mostly empty. What do we do now? Jake asked. Marcus rubbed his face. Now we go home and wait for our lives to implode. But Chad was staring at something on his phone, his expression strange. Guys, you need to see this. He turned the phone around. It was Blackstone's internal employee directory, Victoria Brennan's application file. Except now there was more information. Scanned documents that hadn't been there before. Official Navy records, partially redacted but visible enough to see the truth. Purple Heart, 2 of them. Navy Cross, 16 deployments to classified locations, specialized instructor certifications for naval special warfare units, and buried at the bottom a single line that explained everything. Temporary assignment, Office of the Inspector General, Department of Defense, duration classified. She wasn't lying, Jake whispered, about any of it. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. We just screwed ourselves on camera for someone who was sent here specifically to catch us doing it. No, Chad said quietly. We screwed ourselves the moment we decided that an old woman couldn't possibly be qualified. She just gave us the rope. We tied the noose. Across town, Victoria Brennan sat in a rented Toyota Camry in the parking lot of a Hampton Inn, reviewing footage on her laptop. The body camera had captured everything. Every dismissive comment, every condescending smile, every moment of casual discrimination that these men probably didn't even recognize as discrimination. This was the 5th facility she'd evaluated in 8 months. They were all the same. Different names, different locations, but the same culture, the same assumptions, the same barriers. Her phone buzzed. Agent Morrison. All 3 subjects called in, gave statements. Chen and Rodriguez seemed genuinely remorseful. Marshall's cooperation appears more strategic than ethical, but he's providing useful information. How useful? Names. Dates. 6 female veterans rejected despite superior qualifications. Evidence of falsified contractor credentials submitted to DoD. Possible financial fraud in the hundreds of thousands. Vic closed her eyes. Enough for warrants. More than enough. We'll move on the executives tomorrow morning. I'll need you for the interview process. I'll be there. She ended the call, shut the laptop. Her shoulder was aching, the old injury protesting the obstacle course. She'd pay for that tomorrow. Hell, she was paying for it now. Her phone buzzed again. Different number one she recognized. Hey, Sarah. Hey, yourself. How'd it go? Sarah Torres. Former Marine Force recon forced out after reporting sexual harassment that went nowhere. Now working with the IG's office as a civilian investigator, helping Vic document the industry's systemic failures. Same as always. They saw a middle-aged woman and assumed incompetence. Took them about 90 minutes to realize they'd been set up. Did they cooperate? Eventually, after I made it clear they didn't have a choice. Sarah's voice was quiet. You okay? I know these evaluations take it out of you. Vic leaned her head back against the headrest. I'm fine. That's what you always say. Because it's always true. Vic, you don't have to prove anything anymore. You've done enough. You could walk away from this, enjoy your retirement, let someone else fight these battles. Could I? Silence on the other end. Then Sarah sighed. No, I guess you couldn't. Neither could I, which is why I'm doing this instead of taking that cushy corporate security job. How many cases are we up to now? Including Blackstone, 14 contractors under investigation. 23 individual cases of discrimination documented. 8 facilities shut down or facing contract suspension. Sarah paused. We're making a difference, Vic. It's slow, but it's real. Not fast enough. It never is, but it's faster than it would be if you weren't doing this. They talked for a few more minutes, comparing notes, discussing the next facility on the list. When Vic finally hung up, it was dark outside. She sat in the car for a long time thinking about the day. About Marcus and Chad and Jake, who weren't evil men, just products of a system that had taught them the wrong lessons. About the women who'd been rejected, whose careers had been derailed by assumptions and prejudice. About herself 20 years ago, fighting the same battles in a different uniform. Her phone buzzed a 3rd time. This number she didn't recognize. Chief Brennan. Chief, this is Marcus Chen from Blackstone. Vic sat up straighter. Mr. Chen, I'm surprised to hear from you. Yeah, well, I'm surprised to be calling. Look, I spoke with Agent Morrison, gave my statement. But there's something else. Something I didn't tell her because I'm not sure if it matters, but it's been bothering me. I'm listening. 3 months ago, we had an applicant. Female veteran Marine Corps sniper qualified. Her credentials were better than anyone else we'd interviewed that quarter. Perfect scores on everything. References from 2 Medal of Honor recipients. What happened to her application? It was rejected. I wasn't part of the decision, but I saw the internal emails. The VP of operations said she was too aggressive and wouldn't fit the company culture. But the real reason was in a separate email he sent to the CEO. He said having female instructors would complicate client relationships and create unnecessary HR issues. Vic's hand tightened on the phone. Do you still have those emails? I forwarded them to Agent Morrison 5 minutes ago, but Chief, there's more. That applicant. Her name was Amanda Reeves. She applied to 4 other contractors after we rejected her. All 4 turned her down. Last I heard, she was working mall security in Jacksonville, making $18 an hour. Send me her contact information. Already did. It's in the email to Morrison. Marcus hesitated. Chief, I need you to know something. What I did today, how I treated you, that's not who I want to be. I grew up watching my mother fight for every inch of respect in her career. She's a civil engineer, one of 3 women in her firm. I watched men dismiss her talk over her steal credit for her work. I swore I'd never be that guy. And yet here we are. Yeah, here we are. His voice was rough. I don't have an excuse, I just have a question. How do I fix this? How do I make sure I never do this again? Vic was quiet for a moment. You already started. You recognized the problem. You're taking responsibility. Now you do the harder part. You change your behavior. You challenge it when you see it in others. You make damn sure that the next woman who walks into an evaluation gets judged on her skills, not her age or gender. What if it's too late? What if I've already burned too many bridges? Then you build new ones, better ones. The military taught you how to adapt and overcome Mr. Chen. Apply those skills to this. Yes, ma'am. After he hung up, Vic sat in the darkened car thinking about second chances, about whether people really changed or just got better at hiding their flaws. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Agent Morrison. Chen's emails just gave us the CEO. Financial fraud conspiracy violation of federal employment law. Warrants approved for 0600 tomorrow. Need you at the facility by 0545. Vic checked the time. 2,047 hours. She should eat something, get some sleep, be ready for tomorrow. Instead, she opened her laptop again, pulled up the file on Amanda Reeves. 29 years old, 8 years Marine Corps, Scout Sniper qualified, 2 combat deployments, honorable discharge, exemplary record, currently employed as a security guard at Jacksonville Town Center Mall, $18.50 an hour. Vic found her phone number, hesitated, then dialed. It rang 4 times before a cautious voice answered. Hello, Amanda Reeves. Yes, who's this? My name is Victoria Brennan. I'm a Navy veteran working with the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. I understand you applied to Blackstone Security Solutions 3 months ago. Silence. Then carefully. That's right. They rejected my application. I know. I also know why. And I'm calling to tell you that Blackstone is currently under federal investigation for discriminatory hiring practices. Your rejection is part of that investigation. I don't understand. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know that it wasn't your qualifications that got you rejected. It was illegal discrimination. And because I want to make sure you get the opportunities you earned. Amanda's voice changed, something breaking through. Do you know what it's like to have better credentials than everyone else in the room and still get told you're not good enough? To be the best shot in your unit, to have Marines who served under you write letters of recommendation and still get rejected by every contractor you apply to? Yes, Vic said quietly. I know exactly what that's like. Then you know it makes you start doubting yourself, wondering if maybe they're right. Maybe you're not as good as you thought. Maybe you should just settle for whatever job you can get and be grateful for it. They're not right, Amanda. You are as good as you thought. Better probably. And you shouldn't settle. Not for this. Not for anything. Wente, so what am I supposed to do? Keep applying to places that will reject me. Keep fighting a system that doesn't want me. Vic looked out at the darkened parking lot, thinking about 20 years of similar questions, similar doubts. You keep fighting because that's what we do. Because the only way the system changes is if people like us refuse to quit. And because I'm about to change the equation. What do you mean? I mean that Blackstone isn't the only contractor under investigation. I mean that this industry is about to face some very uncomfortable scrutiny. And I mean that when the dust settles, there are going to be opportunities for people who were wrongfully excluded. Vic paused. I'm building something, Amanda. A network of female veterans who've been pushed out, discriminated against, told they don't belong. When I'm done documenting these violations, when I'm done holding these companies accountable, I'm going to need people. Good people. Qualified people. Are you interested? In what exactly? In being part of the solution instead of another casualty of the problem. Amanda was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger. What do you need from me? Right now, your story, your documentation, every email, every rejection, every conversation you can remember. Agent Morrison will be contacting you for an official statement. After that, we'll talk about what comes next. Okay, I can do that. Good. And Amanda, stop doubting yourself. You earned your qualifications. Don't let anyone make you forget that. After she hung up, Vic sat in the darkness, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavier on her shoulders. 1 woman helped. 13 more documented. How many others were out there working jobs they were overqualified for, wondering if they'd imagined their own competence? She thought about Commander Sullivan's words from years ago, after that operation in Ramadi, when she'd taken fire to cover his team's extraction. The mission isn't over when you complete the objective. It's over when everyone gets home safe. This mission wasn't about exposing corruption. It was about making sure women like Amanda Reeves got home safe, got the careers they'd earned, got the respect they deserved. She was still thinking about it when her phone rang again. Morrison. We've got a problem. Vic's stomach tightened. What kind of problem? Blackstone's CEO just got a tip-off. Someone warned him about the investigation. He's currently in the wind. Private jet filed a flight plan to the Cayman Islands 30 minutes ago. Damn it. Who leaked it? Don't know yet, but it gets worse. He's traveling with evidence. Financial records, employment files, communications. Everything we need to build the criminal case. Can we stop the flight? FAA's trying, but he's got lawyers claiming it's a scheduled business trip. By the time we get a judge to issue a stay order, he'll be wheels up. Vic checked her watch. Where's the flight departing from? Private terminal at Norfolk International. Flight scheduled for 22:30 hours. That's 40 minutes from now. Vic, don't even think about it. You're not law enforcement, you can't stop him. I'm not law enforcement, but I am a federal investigator with credentials and authorization. What's his name? Richard Vance. 6'2", 190 pounds, probably traveling with at least 1 security detail. Send me everything you have on him. I'm 15 minutes from the airport. Vic, this is a bad idea. If he lawyers up, if there's any irregularity in the approach, we could lose the entire case. Then I won't give him anything irregular to complain about. I'll just delay him long enough for FAA to issue that stay order. How are you going to delay a CEO with a private security team and a pilot on standby? Vic was already starting the car. The same way I delayed every other man who underestimated me, by being better prepared than they expect. She drove fast but careful, running scenarios in her head. Vance had been tipped off, which meant he was scared. Scared people made mistakes. They also sometimes made dangerous decisions. The private terminal was exactly what she expected. Small, exclusive, designed for people who thought rules applied to everyone else. She parked in the visitor lot, grabbed her credentials, and walked straight through the front entrance. The woman at the desk looked up, professional smile already forming. Good evening. Do you have a flight scheduled? Vic placed her DoD credentials on the counter. I'm here on official business. I need to speak with Richard Vance. I understand he has a flight departing shortly. The smile faltered. I'm sorry I can't discuss our clients. You can and you will. This is a federal investigation. Mr. Vance is in possession of evidence relevant to ongoing criminal proceedings. I need to speak with him before his departure. I'll need to verify your credentials. Call the DoD Inspector General's office. Ask for Agent Morrison. She'll verify. The woman picked up the phone, made the call, her expression growing more uncertain as she listened to whatever Morrison was telling her. She hung up. Agent Morrison confirmed your identity, but she also said you're not authorized to detain anyone. I'm not here to detain him. I'm here to ensure he's aware of his legal obligations regarding federal evidence. Where is he? The woman hesitated, then gestured toward a hallway. Conference room 3, but he has security with him. I'm aware. Vic walked down the hallway, her heartbeat steady despite the adrenaline. She'd faced down worse than corporate security. She'd faced down actual enemies with actual weapons in actual combat zones. This was just another mission. The conference room door was closed. Through the glass panel, she could see 3 men. One in an expensive suit, mid-50s graying hair, radiating the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. That would be Vance. The other 2 were younger, harder, wearing the subtle tactical clothing of private security. Ex-military, probably. Good at their jobs, probably. But not good enough to have seen what she'd seen. She knocked once, then opened the door without waiting for an invitation. All 3 men turned. Vance's eyes narrowed. Who the hell are you? Vic placed her credentials on the conference table. Victoria Brennan, Chief Warrant Officer, retired. Currently working with the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. Mr. Vance. I need to inform you that you are in possession of evidence relevant to an ongoing federal investigation. Removing that evidence from the jurisdiction could constitute obstruction. Vance glanced at his security team, then back at Vic. I have no idea what you're talking about. You're traveling to the Cayman Islands with financial records and employment files from Blackstone Security Solutions. Those documents are subject to federal subpoena. I'm traveling to a scheduled business meeting. The documents I'm carrying are proprietary business information, which you were ordered to preserve as of this afternoon when DOD served notice of investigation to your company. Vance's expression shifted. I never received any such notice. It was delivered to your registered agent at 1600 hours. Whether you personally received it is irrelevant. The legal obligation stands. One of the security guys stepped forward. Ma'am, Mr. Vance needs to make his flight. If you have legal concerns, you can contact his attorneys. Vic didn't look at him, kept her eyes on Vance. You have 2 options, Mr. Vance. You can voluntarily surrender the documents and proceed with your trip, or you can attempt to leave with them, at which point FAA will be instructed to issue an emergency stay order and you'll be detained at the airport. Either way, you're not leaving this jurisdiction with federal evidence. Vance stood up. He was taller than her by several inches, probably used to using that height to intimidate. You don't have the authority to detain me. You're right, I don't. But TSA does. And they're on their way now along with FBI agents who are very interested in why you're fleeing the country 12 hours after learning about a federal investigation. I'm not fleeing anything. Then why the sudden trip to a non-extradition jurisdiction? Why the private jet at 22:30 hours on a Tuesday? Why the 3 suitcases of documents that should be in your office safe? Vance's jaw tightened. I want my lawyer. Call them. But you're not getting on that plane until this is resolved. The security guy on the left moved closer. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave. Vic finally looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the Ranger tab tattoo on his forearm, the way he carried himself, the calculation in his eyes. What's your name, son? He blinked, surprised by the question. That's not relevant. Humor me. Davis. Why does it matter? Because I want you to understand something, Davis. I'm not some civilian investigator you can intimidate. I spent 20 years in the Navy. I trained special operations personnel for missions you've never heard of. I've been in situations that would make your worst day look like a walk in the park. She paused. So when I tell you that your boss is about to be arrested for federal crimes and that you really don't want to be standing between him and federal agents when they arrive, I'm giving you professional courtesy. Take it. Davis exchanged a glance with the other security guy. Vance slammed his hand on the table. You work for me. I'm ordering you to remove her from this room. But Davis was looking at Vic differently now. You trained Spec Ops what unit? That's classified. Classified. Davis's expression shifted. You're telling me you worked with JSOC. I'm telling you that if you interfere with a federal investigation, your private security license is gone, Your career is over, and you'll spend the next several years explaining to a judge why you chose to protect a criminal instead of doing the right thing. The second security guy, younger than Davis, spoke up. Boss, maybe we should just cooperate. If this is legit... It's not legit, Vance snapped. It's harassment. It's a witch hunt, and I'm not surrendering anything without a court order. Vic pulled out her phone, showed him the screen. That's a federal subpoena signed by a district judge authorizing seizure of all Blackstone Security Solutions records related to hiring practices, financial transactions, and government contracts. It was served to your registered agent this afternoon. You have no legal grounds to remove those documents. Vance stared at the phone, his face reddening. You can't stop me from leaving. Watch me. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Davis stepped back, held up his hands. Mr. Vance, I'm not getting arrested for you. If this is a legitimate federal subpoena, we need to comply. I pay you to protect me. You pay me to provide security, not to commit federal crimes. There's a difference. Vance looked at the second security guy, who also stepped back, shaking his head. Vic moved to the door, opened it. Agent Morrison was standing in the hallway with 2 FBI agents. Mr. Vance, Morrison said, stepping into the room. I'm Agent Morrison, DOD, Inspector General. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to defraud the United States government, and violation of federal employment law. You have the right to remain silent. As Morrison read him his rights, and the FBI agents cuffed him, Vance stared at Vic with pure hatred. You just ended your career, he hissed. I have lawyers who will bury you. I have friends in Congress. You have nothing, Vic said quietly, except a federal indictment and a lot of time to think about the choices that brought you here. They let him out. Davis lingered, looking at Vic. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Were you really classified, or was that just a bluff to get us to back down? Vic smiled, but there was no humor in it. Call Commander Todd Sullivan at JSOC. Ask him about Ghost. If he confirms, you'll have your answer. She walked out, leaving Davis standing in the empty conference room, already pulling out his phone. Outside, Morrison was supervising the evidence seizure. 3 large cases of documents, all tagged and cataloged. That was reckless, Morrison said, but she was smiling, confronting him without backup. I had backup. You were 2 minutes away. He could have run, could have had his security team rough you up, could have destroyed evidence. He could have, but he didn't, because men like Vance spend their whole lives relying on other people to back down. When they finally meet someone who won't, they don't know what to do. Vic watched as the FBI agents loaded Vance into their vehicle. How solid is the case? With the documents, he was trying to flee with ironclad. We've got financial fraud, falsified credentials submitted to DOD, evidence of systematic discrimination in hiring. He's looking at 10 years minimum. And the company? Blackstone's done. Contracts will be terminated, assets seized to pay restitution. The board of directors is cooperating to save themselves. They're giving up everyone. Vic nodded slowly. What about the people he hurt? The women who were rejected, discriminated against, driven out? That's where you come in. We'll need victim statements, documentation, testimony. Build the civil case for damages while the criminal case proceeds. I'll start reaching out tomorrow. Morrison looked at her carefully. You did good work tonight, Vic, but you're exhausted. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours? I'll sleep when this is done. It's never going to be done. There will always be another Blackstone, another Vance, another woman who needs help. You can't fix the entire system alone. I'm not alone. I've got you. I've got Sarah Torres. I've got every woman who's willing to stand up and fight. Vic looked up at the night sky. And maybe that's enough. Maybe if we keep fighting, keep documenting, keep holding people accountable, eventually the system runs out of places to hide. Or maybe you burn yourself out trying to save everyone and end up saving no one. That's not going to happen. How can you be sure? Vic met her eyes. Because I already burned out once. In Mosul, 2007. Took an IED blast that should have killed me. Was told I'd never use my arm again, watched my career end because I reported harassment, and the Navy decided I was the problem, not the predator. She paused. I came back from that. I'll come back from this too. As many times as it takes. Morrison sighed. You're stubborn as hell, you know that. I've been told. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the taillights of the FBI vehicle disappear into the night. Then Morrison's phone rang. She answered, listened, her expression changing. When? How many? Okay, yeah, she's right here. She hung up, looked at Vic. That was the DC office. Word about Vance's arrest just hit the industry. We've received 17 calls in the past hour. Female veterans who were rejected by contractors, who were harassed, who were pushed out. They all want to talk. They all want to file complaints. Vic felt something shift in her chest. Not relief exactly, more like validation. Get their information. I'll start making calls tomorrow. Vic, that's going to take weeks, months maybe. You can't interview all of them yourself. Then I'll get help, but I'll talk to every single one who wants to talk, because that's the job. That's what I signed up for when I decided to do this. Morrison shook her head, but she was smiling. You're going to change this industry whether it wants to change or not, aren't you? I'm going to try. That's not what I asked. Vic smiled back. Then yes I am. She drove back to the Hampton Inn as midnight approached her body, aching, her mind racing with everything that needed to happen next. 17 women, 17 stories, 17 careers that deserved better. And that was just the beginning. Her phone buzzed as she pulled into the parking lot. Text from a number she didn't recognize. Chief Brennan, this is Davis, the security guy from tonight. I called Commander Sullivan. He confirmed everything. Told me you were one of the best instructors he ever had. Told me I was lucky you gave me a chance to do the right thing. I just wanted to say thank you. And I'm sorry for how things went down. If you ever need anything, you have my number. Vic stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, thank you for listening. That's all anyone can ask. She sat in the car thinking about second chances, about men who could change when given the opportunity, about systems that could be reformed when enough people refused to accept them as they were. Tomorrow she'd start calling those 17 women. Tomorrow she'd begin building the case that would reshape an entire industry. Tomorrow she'd prove once again that being underestimated was the best tactical advantage anyone could have. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. One CEO arrested, one company destroyed, 3 men forced to confront their own bias, one security guard who chose integrity over a paycheck, and 17 women who finally believed someone might actually listen. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was progress. And progress, however slow, was still movement forward. She went inside, collapsed on the bed without changing clothes, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she slept without nightmares. Retry. The nightmares came back 3 days later. Vic woke at 03:42 hours, sweat-soaked sheets twisted around her legs, the phantom sound of an explosion still ringing in her ears. Not Mosul this time. Kandahar, 2009. The operation that had earned her the second Purple Heart and destroyed any illusion that the Navy would ever fully accept what she'd been doing. She lay in the darkness, breathing through the panic, using the techniques the VA therapist had taught her years ago. Count backward from 20. Focus on real sounds, real sensations. Remember, you're safe. Safe. Right. Her phone showed 43 unread emails and 12 voicemails. She'd interviewed 6 of the 17 women who'd called in. Each story was different. Each story was the same. Qualified women rejected, dismissed, pushed aside because the industry had decided they were problems rather than solutions. She got up, made coffee, opened her laptop. Agent Morrison had sent over financial records from Blackstone. The fraud was worse than they'd thought. Vance had been billing DoD for Tier 1 operators with extensive combat experience. Half of them were kids fresh out of basic training with fabricated credentials. One name caught her eye, James Foster, listed as former SEAL Team 6, decorated veteran expert instructor. Billing rate $850 per day. Vic ran his name through the Navy database she still had access to. No SEAL qualification, no special operations background. 4 years active duty as a supply clerk. Discharged for disciplinary issues in 2019. She picked up her phone, called Morrison. It's barely 0600 Vic. Foster. James Foster. Blackstone had him listed as DevGru. He's a fake. Papers rustling on Morrison's end. How fake? Never went to Buds, never saw combat, never did anything except manage inventory in San Diego. Blackstone was charging DoD $850 a day for a supply clerk to teach advanced tactics. Jesus, how many others pay? I found 3 so far, still checking the rest. But Morrison, if Blackstone was doing this, how many other contractors are running the same scam? Silence. Then Morrison's voice tight with anger. Every single one. That's how many. This isn't an isolated incident. This is industry standard. So what do? We expand the investigation, every major contractor, full audit. And Vic, you're going to need help. Real help. This is bigger than 2 people can handle. I know someone. Former Marine intelligence background. She's been documenting contractor fraud for 18 months on her own. Name's Catherine Chen. Not related to Marcus Chen. His younger sister, actually. She's the one who first tipped him off that something was wrong at Blackstone. She's good, Morrison. Better than good. She's relentless. Bring her in. I'll clear it with DC. We'll need at least a dozen investigators to make this work. After she hung up, Vic stared at the laptop screen at the list of names that represented both the problem and the potential solution. 17 women who'd been rejected, 3 frauds already identified, dozens more contractors to investigate. This was going to take months, maybe years. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Chief Brennan? Chief, this is Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Davidson, Army JAG. I need to speak with you about your investigation into Blackstone Security Solutions. Vic's instincts prickled. JAG didn't call civilians about ongoing investigations unless something had gone seriously wrong. What's this about, Colonel? I'm afraid I can't discuss details over an unsecured line. Can you meet me at Fort Story this morning, 0900 hours? That's 3 hours from now. I'm aware this is urgent, Chief. Lives may be at stake. Vic felt her stomach drop. What kind of lives? The kind that are currently deployed in hostile territory, being protected by contractors who may not be qualified to protect anyone. 0900 hours, Fort Story Building 342. Come alone. The line went dead. Vic sat motionless for exactly 10 seconds. Then she called Morrison. JAG just contacted me. Patricia Davidson. Says she needs to meet about Blackstone, says lives are at stake. Told me to come alone. That's not protocol. JAG doesn't interfere with IG investigations without authorization from the Pentagon. That's what I thought. Run her name. See if she's legitimate. Already on it. Vic, if this is someone trying to intimidate you. I've been intimidated by actual enemies with actual weapons. A lawyer doesn't scare me. It's not the lawyer I'm worried about. It's who might have sent her. Vic drove to Fort Story with her service weapon, a Sig Sauer P226 she'd carried for 12 years, loaded and secured in her glove compartment. She didn't think she'd need it. But thinking you didn't need a weapon was how you ended up needing a weapon. Building 342 was administrative, mostly empty at this hour. Colonel Davidson was waiting in a conference room, a woman in her mid-40s with steel gray hair and the posture of someone who'd spent decades in uniform. Chief Brennan, thank you for coming. Vic didn't sit. You said lives were at stake. Explain. Davidson slid a folder across the table. 3 days ago, a convoy in Syria was ambushed. 2 American contractors were killed. 4 more wounded. The contractors were employed by Blackstone Security Solutions to provide security for State Department personnel. Vic opened the folder. Photos of young men barely older than kids, faces frozen in death. I'm sorry for their loss, but I don't understand what this has to do with my investigation. The contractors who died weren't qualified for the mission. They'd been in country for 6 weeks. Neither had combat experience. One of them had never even deployed before. Davidson's voice was cold. But according to Blackstone's contract with State, both were listed as former special operations with extensive experience in high-threat environments. They were fake credentials. Yes. And now they're dead, along with 2 State Department employees who believed they were being protected by experts. Vic felt something crack inside her chest. You're saying my investigation got people killed. I'm saying that when you arrested Richard Vance, when you exposed Blackstone's fraud, you created a power vacuum. The company's operations continued without leadership, without oversight. Contractors who should never have been deployed were sent anyway because nobody was there to stop it. That's not on me. That's on Blackstone. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you prioritized catching criminals over protecting the people those criminals were supposed to be protecting. Davidson leaned forward. I'm not here to shut down your investigation, Chief. I'm here to make sure it doesn't get anyone else killed. We need to coordinate. JAG, IG, State Department, DOD. This needs to be controlled. Controlled. You mean buried. I mean managed. There are 17 other contractors with active DOD contracts who may be running similar frauds. If we expose them all at once, if we arrest every CEO and shut down every company who protects our people in the field, who covers the gaps. Vic wanted to argue. Wanted to say that justice mattered more than convenience. But the photos were still on the table. Two young men who'd believed they were working for a legitimate company, who'd trusted that the credentials on paper matched reality. What do you want from me? A list. Every contractor you've identified as potentially fraudulent. We'll conduct quiet audits, verify credentials, replace fake operators with real ones. Once personnel are secure, once our people are actually protected, then we'll move forward with prosecutions. That could take months. Better than more body bags. Vic picked up the photos, studied the faces. These men, did they know they weren't qualified? We don't know. Possibly not. They were told they were ready, told they could handle it. They believed the company wouldn't send them into situations they couldn't survive. But the company didn't care. As long as they got paid, as long as the contract continued, they didn't care who died. Exactly. Davidson stood. So help me make sure that doesn't happen again. Give me the list. Let us fix this quietly, quickly, without creating more casualties. Vic wanted to say no. Wanted to tell Davidson that covering up fraud, even temporarily, was exactly how systems like this perpetuated, but the photos wouldn't let her. I'll need assurances. Full prosecutions once personnel are secure. No deals for the executives who knew. No quiet retirements. You have my word. Your word isn't enough. I need it in writing, from the DOD General Counsel, signed and dated. Davidson pulled out her phone. I'll have it to you by 1200 hours. And I want protection for the women who've come forward. Full whistleblower status. No retaliation. Done. And I want oversight. I'm not handing you a list and walking away. I'm involved in every audit, every replacement, every decision. Davidson's jaw tightened. That's not standard protocol. Neither is sending unqualified contractors to die in combat zones. Either I'm involved, or you don't get the list. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Davidson nodded. Fine. But you follow JAG procedures. You don't go rogue. You don't talk to press. You don't do anything that compromises operational security. Agreed. Vic left Fort Story feeling like she'd made a deal with the devil. Maybe she had. But if it kept more people from dying, if it gave her the leverage to fix the system from the inside, maybe it was worth it. She called Morrison on the drive back. JAG wants to coordinate. They're offering resources, legal support, protection for witnesses. In exchange, we slow down the public prosecutions until personnel are secured. And you agreed to this. I looked at photos of two kids who died because they were sent into a war zone with fake credentials, Morrison. Yes, I agreed to it, but only with conditions. Full prosecutions later, written guarantees, and I stay involved in every step. Morrison was quiet. You know this is going to take longer now. The moment we bring JAG into this, the moment we start coordinating with state and DOD, the bureaucracy multiplies. I know, but it's the right call. Is it, or is it just the call that lets you sleep at night? The question hit harder than Vic expected. Maybe there's no difference. She spent the rest of the day compiling the list Davidson wanted. 14 contractors with active DOD contracts. Preliminary evidence of fraud in 12 of them. Hundreds of personnel with questionable credentials. Catherine Chen called at 15:30 hours. Marcus gave me your number. Said you might need help with something big. How much did he tell you? Enough to know you're going after the entire industry. Enough to know you're probably in over your head and too stubborn to admit it. Sounds like your brother knows me well. He respects you. That's different. My brother doesn't respect many people. Catherine paused. I've been tracking contractor fraud for a year and a half. started when I saw what they did to my friend, a female combat vet rejected by 8 companies despite perfect qualifications. I've documented 73 cases of credential fabrication, 42 cases of discrimination, and at least 20 instances of contractors billing for services never rendered. Morrison's clearing you to join the investigation. Can you start immediately? I already started. I'll send you my files tonight. Catherine, this isn't going to be easy. We're going up against billion-dollar companies, powerful executives, and an industry that has no interest in changing. Good. I like difficult. That night, Catherine's files arrived. 300 pages of documentation. Names, dates, conversations, financial records. She'd been building a case for 18 months alone without resources or authority, just because she knew it needed to be done. Vic read through it all, her respect for Catherine growing with every page. This woman had done what most people wouldn't even attempt. She documented an entire system's failure without anyone asking her to, without getting paid for it just because it was right. Her phone rang at 22:47 hours. Sarah Torres. Turn on the news. Channel 7. Vic fumbled for the remote. The screen showed a press conference. A woman in her 30s, military bearing, speaking into microphones. My name is Captain Jennifer Martinez, former Army intelligence officer. I'm here today to expose systematic fraud in the private military contractor industry. For the past 2 years, I've been employed by Titan Defense Solutions as an intelligence analyst. During that time, I've witnessed extensive credential fabrication, witnessed unqualified personnel deployed to combat zones, witnessed executives prioritizing profit over human life. The reporter jumped in. Captain Martinez, do you have evidence of these allegations? I have 2,000 pages of evidence. Emails, financial records, personnel files. I've provided copies to the Department of Defense Inspector General, to the FBI, and to the Senate Armed Services Committee. And I'm here today to encourage every veteran who's been rejected, discriminated against, or pushed out of this industry to come forward. You're not alone, and change is coming. Vic's phone exploded with calls. Morrison, Davidson, Catherine. 3 reporters who'd somehow gotten her number. She ignored them all and called one person. Captain Martinez, this is Chief Victoria Brennan. We need to talk. They met the next morning at a coffee shop in Virginia Beach. Martinez was exactly what Vic expected. Sharp, focused, angry in that controlled way that came from military discipline, channeling righteous fury. I saw what you did to Blackstone, Martinez said. That's when I knew it was time. If you could take down Vance, maybe the rest of them could fall too. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I was scared. Because I thought I'd be alone. Because I thought nobody would listen. Martinez's hands were shaking slightly around her coffee cup. But then I saw those photos. The contractors who died in Syria. One of them was my friend. We went through basic together. He was a good man, a good soldier. But he had no business being in that situation, and Titan sent him anyway because they could bill $850 a day, whether he was qualified or not. I'm sorry for your loss. I don't want sympathy. I want accountability. I want every executive who knowingly sent unqualified people into combat zones to face criminal charges. I want every woman who was rejected because of her gender to get justice. I want this industry to burn and be rebuilt from scratch. Vic smiled slightly. You're going to get along well with Catherine Chen. Over the next week, the investigation exploded. Martinez's press conference opened floodgates. 43 more veterans came forward with stories of discrimination, fraud, or retaliation. The Senate Armed Services Committee announced hearings. The DoD suspended contracts with 6 major firms pending credential verification. And Vic found herself at the center of something much bigger than she'd anticipated. Davidson called on day 8. We've completed initial audits on 4 contractors. The fraud is worse than we thought. 60% of personnel have fabricated or exaggerated credentials. We're pulling them immediately, but that leaves gaps in critical security operations worldwide. How big are the gaps? Embassy security in 3 countries, convoy protection in 2 active combat zones, training operations for allied forces in 4 more locations. We're talking hundreds of positions that need immediate filling. So fill them. There are thousands of qualified veterans looking for work. It's not that simple. Clearances take time. Training takes time. We need people who can deploy immediately. Vic understood where this was going. You want the women who've been rejected, the ones who were actually qualified all along. Exactly. We've been excluding the best candidates because of gender discrimination. Now we're paying the price. Those women deserve better than being treated as emergency backup options. They deserve jobs that match their qualifications. They deserve to work without harassment. They deserve opportunities they've been unfairly denied. I'm offering all of that. Not because I'm enlightened, because I'm desperate. But does the motivation matter if the outcome is right? Vic thought about Amanda Reeves working mall security for $18 an hour. About Martinez, who'd risked everything to expose fraud. About Catherine Chen, who'd spent 18 months documenting injustice without being asked. I'll reach out to them. But Davidson, this can't be temporary. This can't be us fixing an immediate problem and then going back to excluding women once the crisis passes. That's why I need your help. Not just fixing this crisis. Reforming the entire system. New standards. New oversight. New culture. But I can't do it alone. Neither can JAG. We need people who understand what the problems are because they've lived them. What exactly are you proposing? A task force, DoD-led, civilian-military partnership. Goal is comprehensive reform of the PMC industry. New credentialing standards, independent verification, protection for whistleblowers, and zero tolerance for discrimination. Who leads this task force? Davidson met her eyes. I was hoping you would. The offer hung in the air between them. I'm retired Navy. I have no official authority. You'd be contracted as a civilian advisor with full investigative authority, salary and benefits equivalent to a GS-15, direct reporting line to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and enough institutional backing to actually make changes instead of just documenting problems. Why me? Because you've proven you can't be bought, can't be intimidated, and won't quit even when quitting would be easier. Because veterans trust you. Because you understand the system from the inside. And because, frankly, I can't think of anyone better. Vic looked out the coffee shop window at the morning traffic. Regular people going to regular jobs, none of them thinking about the invisible systems that protected them, the flawed institutions that sometimes failed them. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. Catherine Chen and Jennifer Martinez are part of the team, non-negotiable. Agreed. We report our findings publicly. No classified reports that get buried. Within operational security limits, yes. And every woman who was discriminated against gets priority consideration for these new positions, not as charity, as restitution. Davidson extended her hand. Deal. They shook on it, and Vic felt the weight of what she'd just agreed to settle onto her shoulders. This wasn't just about exposing fraud anymore. This was about rebuilding an entire industry, about creating the system that should have existed all along. She called Amanda Reeves first. Amanda, it's Victoria Brennan. How would you like to stop working mall security and start doing the job you were actually trained for? Amanda's voice was cautious. What kind of job? Embassy security. Baghdad. 6-month contract. Pay is $650 per day, plus hazard bonus. You'd be training Iraqi forces in advanced marksmanship and close protection. Clearance has already been verified. You could deploy in 2 weeks. Silence. Then, are you serious? Completely. I'm reaching out to every qualified woman who was rejected by these contractors. You're first on my list. Why? Because you're a Marine Corps sniper who's been working mall security because this industry decided you weren't good enough. Because that's bullshit. And because I'm in a position now to do something about it. Amanda's voice broke slightly. I thought I was done. I thought my career was over at 29. Your career is just starting. Are you in? Hell yes, I'm in. Vic made 17 more calls that day. 16 women said yes immediately. The 17th, a former Navy helicopter pilot named Sarah Kim, asked the question Vic had been expecting. Is this real change, or is this temporary? Are we being brought in because they finally realized we're valuable, or because they're desperate and we're convenient? Probably the second one, Vic admitted. But that doesn't mean we can't turn it into the first one. They're bringing us in because they need us. That gives us leverage. We use that leverage to force permanent changes, new policies, new oversight, new culture. We make ourselves indispensable. And if they try to push us out again once the crisis is over, then we fight harder. But Sarah, we're not going to win this by standing on the sidelines. We win by getting in the game, proving we belong, and making damn sure they can never exclude us again. Okay, I'm in. But if this goes sideways, it won't. Not on my watch. Over the next 3 weeks, the task force took shape. Davidson secured funding and authority. Catherine Chen compiled comprehensive documentation of industry practices. Martinez coordinated with Senate investigators. And Vic started placing qualified women into positions they should have had all along. The pushback was immediate and vicious. Contractors filed lawsuits claiming reverse discrimination. Industry lobbyists pressured Congress. Op-eds appeared in defense publications questioning whether women could handle high-threat environments. Vic ignored it all and focused on results. Within a month, 47 women were deployed to security positions worldwide. Within 2 months, incident reports showed they were performing at or above the level of their male counterparts. Within 3 months, client satisfaction ratings for female-led teams were the highest in the industry. The data was undeniable. Women weren't just capable, they were excellent. Marcus Chen called in week 12. "Chief, I wanted you to know I'm leaving Blackstone. The company's shutting down anyway, but I'm not waiting. I'm starting something new. Small firm, veteran-owned, focused on quality over profit, and I'm hiring only qualified personnel regardless of gender." "That's good, Marcus. What changed?" "You did. You showed me what real leadership looks like, what integrity costs. And you made me realize I'd rather have that than another paycheck from a company that was built on lies. I didn't do anything except hold up a mirror. Sometimes that's all it takes. Will you be a reference for my DoD contract applications? Send me the paperwork." Davidson called that same afternoon. "We've got a problem. Senator Hawkins is threatening to shut down the task force. Says it's overreach, says we're engaged in social engineering instead of national security. What does he really want? He's got 3 major contractors in his district. They're his biggest campaign donors. If we keep exposing fraud, keep pushing reforms, those companies are going to lose contracts. Maybe go bankrupt. He's protecting his financial interests. So what do? We testify. Senate Armed Services Committee. Public hearing, next Thursday. You, me, Martinez, and Chen. We lay out everything we found. Make it impossible for him to shut us down without looking like he's defending fraud. Public testimony means full exposure. Everything I did in the Navy, everything that's still classified, it's all going to come out. I know, and I can't promise they won't use it against you. Can't promise your service record won't get scrutinized, questioned, weaponized. But Vic, if we don't testify, if we let Hawkins shut this down, everything we've done is for nothing." Vic thought about the women she'd placed in the past 3 months. About Amanda Reeves now training Iraqi forces instead of checking IDs at a mall. About Sarah Kim flying security missions over hostile territory. About Catherine and Martinez who'd risked their careers to expose the truth. "I'll testify, whatever it costs." It might cost everything. Then it costs everything. Some things are worth that price. The hearing was scheduled for 0900 hours the following Thursday. Vic spent the week preparing reviewing documentation, anticipating hostile questions. Catherine and Martinez were nervous but determined. Davidson was all business-focused, entirely on the mission. The night before the hearing, Vic's phone rang at 23:43 hours. Unknown number. "Chief Brennan?" The voice was male, distorted clearly using a modulator. "You need to withdraw your testimony tomorrow." "Who is this?" "Someone who's trying to keep you from making a mistake you can't undo. Testify tomorrow and everything about your Navy career becomes public. Every classified mission, every operation that never officially happened, every person you worked with, every tactic you taught, every compromise you made to survive in a system that didn't want you. Is that a threat? It's a warning. There are people with a lot to lose if your testimony moves forward. They'll destroy your reputation, your credibility, your legacy. They'll paint you as a disgruntled veteran with an axe to grind. They'll question every commendation, every operation, every moment of your service. Let them try. You're not hearing me, Chief. They won't just come after you. They'll come after everyone you've helped, every woman you've placed, every veteran you've protected. They'll question their credentials, their qualifications, their fitness for service. They'll use you to delegitimize them. Vic's hand tightened on the phone. Who are you? Someone who knows how these games are played. Someone who's seen good people destroyed for doing the right thing. Someone who's trying to give you an out before it's too late. I don't need an out. I need the truth to be heard. The truth doesn't matter in Washington. Power matters, money matters, and the people you're threatening have both. Then they'd better be ready for a fight. The line went dead. Vic sat in the darkness of her hotel room feeling the weight of what tomorrow would bring. She'd faced enemy fire, had survived explosions, had rebuilt her life from ruins more than once. But she'd never testified before the United States Senate, never exposed classified operations to public scrutiny, never risked everything she'd worked for on the belief that truth mattered more than consequences. She thought about calling Sarah Torres, about asking for advice, for reassurance, for someone to tell her she was doing the right thing. Instead, she opened her laptop and reviewed her testimony one more time. The words were simple. The evidence was overwhelming. The conclusion was undeniable. The private military contractor industry was broken, corrupt, and needed comprehensive reform. And tomorrow she was going to make sure the world knew it, no matter what it cost her. She closed the laptop at 0147 hours, set her alarm for 0530, and tried to sleep. The nightmares came back with a vengeance. Not Mosul this time. Not Kandahar. This time she dreamed of a Senate hearing room where every question was an attack, every answer was used against her. Every truth she spoke was twisted into a weapon designed to destroy everything she'd built. She woke at 0412 hours, gave up on sleep, and started getting ready. By 0600 hours, she was dressed, armed with documentation, and ready to face whatever came next. Her phone buzzed. Text from Catherine. Ready for battle. Vic typed back, always. Another text this time from Martinez. Let's burn this whole system down. And finally from Amanda Reeves. Whatever happens today, thank you for giving me my career back. You changed my life. Vic stared at that last message for a long time. Then she picked up her briefcase, walked out of her hotel room, and headed toward the Capitol building, where her testimony would either change everything or destroy everything. Either way, she was done hiding, done compromising, done accepting a system that valued profit over people, convenience over justice, tradition over truth. Today, she was going to speak, and the world was going to listen, whether they wanted to or not. The Senate hearing room was already packed when Vic arrived at 0815 hours. Press in the back rows, cameras positioned for maximum coverage staffers, whispering urgently into phones. She recognized faces from defense publications, from veteran advocacy groups, from the contractors themselves, sitting in the gallery, with expressions that ranged from hostile to terrified. Davidson was waiting near the witness table, her JAG uniform immaculate, her face carefully neutral. Ready? No, Vic said honestly, but I'm here anyway. Catherine and Martinez arrived moments later, both carrying briefcases thick with documentation. Catherine's hands were shaking slightly. Martinez looked like she was preparing for combat, which maybe she was. They're going to try to discredit us, Martinez said quietly. Everything we say, they'll twist it. Everything we've done, they'll question it. Let them, Vic said. We've got truth on our side. That has to count for something. Does it? Catherine's voice was tight. My brother called this morning, said he's getting threats. People telling him to keep his mouth shut, to control his sister, to remember where his loyalties should be. He's safe. For now. But Vic, they're going after families. Going after anyone connected to this. If we testify, if we expose everything, it's not just us who pay the price. Vic thought about the distorted voice on the phone last night, the warning she'd ignored. They'd meant it. Of course they'd meant it. You can still walk away, she told Catherine. Both of you. I won't judge. I won't blame you. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't. Martinez's jaw was set. I lost a friend in Syria because some executive decided profit mattered more than human life. That made it my fight. Catherine nodded. And I watched this industry destroy qualified women for 18 months before I even met you. I'm not walking away now. Senator Hawkins entered at 08:55 hours, flanked by 2 aides and radiating the particular arrogance of someone who'd never been told no by anyone who mattered. He was mid-60s, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing an American flag pin that somehow looked more like a weapon than a symbol. He took his seat at the center of the committee panel, gavelled the hearing to order precisely at 0900, and began with the smile of a predator who'd already decided how this would end. This committee convenes today to examine allegations of fraud and discrimination in the private military contractor industry. We have before us testimony from several witnesses who claim systemic failures requiring federal intervention. His tone made it clear what he thought of those claims. Let me be clear from the outset. The men and women of America's defense contractor industry provide vital services to our national security. They protect our diplomats, train our allies, and fill critical gaps in our defense posture. Any attempt to paint this industry with a broad brush of criminality does a disservice to the thousands of patriots who serve with honor. Vic felt her teeth clench. He was setting the narrative before they'd even spoken. Hawkins looked directly at her. Our first witness is Victoria Brennan, retired Navy Chief Warrant Officer. Chief Brennan, you're currently contracted with the Department of Defense Inspector General's office to investigate defense contractors. Is that correct? Yes, Senator. And how long have you held this position? 14 weeks. 14 weeks. And in that time, you've overseen the arrest of multiple executives, the suspension of contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and the termination of employment for dozens of contractors. Quite an impact for someone with less than 4 months of experience. I'm not sure I understand your question, Senator. My question is whether you might be overreaching, whether your actions might be motivated by something other than objective investigation. Davidson leaned forward. Senator, if I may interject, Chief Brennan was selected for this position specifically because of her extensive background in PUG. Colonel Davidson, you'll have your opportunity to testify. Right now, I'm asking Chief Brennan about her qualifications. Hawkins turned back to Vic. Chief, your Navy service record is partially classified, is that correct? Yes, Senator. Can you tell this committee why portions of your service are classified? Because I worked with Naval Special Warfare units on operations that remain classified for national security reasons. You worked with SEAL teams? Yes. In what capacity? I was an instructor. I trained personnel in specialized skills required for high-risk operations. What kind of specialized skills? Vic felt the trap closing. I'm not authorized to discuss specifics, Senator. The operations remain classified. Convenient. You claim extensive qualifications, but you can't actually tell us what those qualifications are. You claim expertise, but it's all hidden behind classification. How is this committee supposed to evaluate your credibility when we can't verify your background? Senator, my credentials have been verified by the Navy, by DoD, and by the Inspector General's office. If you'd like additional verification, I can provide contacts at Naval Special Warfare Command who can speak to my service within the bounds of what's declassified. I'm sure you can provide references. But references don't tell us about motivation. They don't tell us if you have an axe to grind. Hawkins leaned back, steepling his fingers. Chief Brennan, isn't it true that you were forced to retire from the Navy after filing a harassment complaint against a senior officer? The room went silent. Vic felt her pulse spike but kept her voice level. I retired honorably after 20 years of service, Senator. Yes, I filed a harassment complaint. That complaint was investigated and substantiated. The officer in question was quietly forced to retire. Quietly forced to retire. But you were also forced to retire, weren't you? Despite your so-called excellent record. I was given the choice to retire or face a career where I would be frozen out of promotions and opportunities because I'd become a liability to people who preferred institutional silence over accountability. I chose retirement. So you have a history of making allegations against authority figures, allegations that result in career damage for everyone involved. And now you're making similar allegations against an entire industry. Do you see why some might question whether this is really about justice or about personal vendetta? Vic wanted to stand up, wanted to walk around the table and explain to Hawkins exactly what kind of courage it took to report harassment when you knew it would end your career. Instead, she kept her seat and her composure. Senator, the evidence I've gathered isn't about my feelings or my history. It's about documented fraud, fabricated credentials, unqualified personnel deployed to combat zones, financial crimes totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. That evidence exists regardless of who collected it. Evidence you claim to have. But you're asking this committee, asking the American people to trust the judgment of someone who admittedly has conflicts with authority, who left the Navy under questionable circumstances, and who's now targeting an industry that happens to be largely male-dominated. Forgive me if I see a pattern. Martinez stood up suddenly. Senator, with respect, that's bullshit. The room erupted. Hawkins's gavel came down hard. Captain Martinez, you will sit down and you will maintain decorum, or you will be removed from this hearing. Martinez didn't sit. You want to talk about patterns, Senator? Let's talk about the pattern of blaming women who report misconduct, instead of addressing the misconduct itself. Let's talk about the pattern of protecting powerful men while destroying the careers of anyone who challenges them. Let's talk about your campaign donations from the very contractors we're investigating and whether that might represent a conflict of interest on your part. Captain Martinez, sit down now. I'll sit down when you stop attacking Chief Brennan's credibility and start looking at the evidence. 2 men died in Syria because Blackstone sent them into combat with fake credentials. That's a fact. 16 women with superior qualifications were rejected for positions that went to less qualified men. That's a fact. Executives billed the government for Tier 1 operators while employing supply clerks and desk jockeys. That's a fact. Those facts don't change based on Chief Brennan's service history or her motivations. Hawkins's face was red. You will be held in contempt if you don't sit down immediately. Then hold me in contempt. But first explain to these cameras, to the American people watching this hearing, why you're more interested in attacking the investigators than investigating the crimes. Security moved toward Martinez, but Senator Williams, a Democrat from California sitting 3 seats down from Hawkins, raised her hand. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Captain Martinez raises a valid concern. Before we continue questioning witnesses about their personal histories, perhaps we should review the actual evidence they've brought before this committee. Hawkins glared at Williams. Senator, I'm conducting this hearing according to proper procedure. With respect, Mr. Chairman, interrogating witnesses about their service records while ignoring documented evidence of federal crimes doesn't strike me as proper procedure. It strikes me as a deflection tactic. Williams looked at Vic. Chief Brennan, you mentioned evidence. Can you provide this committee with specific examples? Vic opened her briefcase, pulled out folders. Yes, Senator. I have documentation of 14 contractors with active DoD agreements who employed personnel with fabricated credentials. I have financial records showing billing fraud exceeding $340 million over a 3-year period. I have testimony from 43 female veterans who were rejected despite superior qualifications. I have emails from executives explicitly discussing how to avoid hiring women to prevent HR complications. Would you like me to enter these into the record? Please do. Catherine stood, began distributing folders to committee members. Hawkins tried to interrupt, but Williams cut him off. Mr. Chairman, these are serious allegations backed by documentation. This committee has a responsibility to review evidence, not suppress it. For the next 90 minutes, Vic walked the committee through the evidence, names, dates, specific instances. She showed them James Foster's fabricated SEAL credentials beside his actual service record as a supply clerk. She showed them Amanda Reeves's rejection letter despite perfect qualifications. She showed them emails from Richard Vance discussing how to maximize profits by employing the cheapest labor regardless of capability. Some senators listened with genuine concern. Others, clearly aligned with Hawkins, tried to interrupt, to deflect, to minimize. But the evidence kept coming, relentless and undeniable. At 11:47 hours, Hawkins called a recess. As Vic stood to leave the witness table, he leaned close. You just made a very powerful enemy, Chief Brennan. I've had powerful enemies before, Senator. I'm still here. They're not. During the lunch break, Vic's phone exploded with messages. Some supportive, some threatening, most from reporters wanting interviews. She ignored them all and focused on preparing for the afternoon session. Davidson found her in a quiet hallway looking stressed. That was reckless. Martinez standing up like that, confronting Hawkins directly. She could have derailed everything. She didn't derail it. She put him on the defensive. She also gave him ammunition. He'll paint her as unstable, emotional, unable to maintain professional composure. Let him try. Anyone watching that exchange saw exactly what happened. Hawkins attacked the investigation, and when Martinez called him on it, he couldn't defend his position, so he threatened her with contempt. Vic looked at Davidson. We're winning. He knows it. That's why he's desperate. We're not winning until the committee votes for reform. Until then, this is all just theater. The afternoon session began at 13:30 hours with testimony from Catherine Chen. She was methodical, careful, presenting data with the precision of someone who'd spent 18 months building an airtight case. Senator Hawkins tried the same approach he'd used with Vic, questioning her credentials, her motivations. But Catherine didn't give him an opening. Senator, I'm not a federal investigator. I'm not a veteran seeking employment. I'm a private citizen who documented what I saw because nobody else was doing it. My motivations are irrelevant. The data speaks for itself. And what exactly qualifies you to analyze this data? I have a master's degree in forensic accounting and 12 years of experience as a defense industry analyst. I've conducted audits for 3 federal agencies. My qualifications are in the materials provided to this committee. Would you like me to walk through my CV, or would you prefer to discuss the 73 documented cases of credential fraud I've identified? Hawkins moved on to different tactics, but Catherine had an answer for everything. By the time her testimony concluded, even hostile senators were nodding at some of her points. Martinez testified next, and she was fire barely contained. She spoke about her friend who died in Syria, about the executives who'd known he wasn't qualified but deployed him anyway, about the culture of profit over safety that permeated the industry. This isn't about gender, she said, her voice steady despite obvious emotion. This is about integrity, about whether we care more about human lives or corporate balance sheets. My friend believed he was working for a company that valued competence. Instead, he worked for a company that valued his billing rate. And now he's dead, along with 2 State Department employees who trusted that their security team was actually capable of protecting them. The room was silent. Senator Williams spoke first. Captain Martinez, you mentioned that qualified women were rejected while less qualified men were hired. Can you quantify that? Based on documentation, Chief Brennan and Ms. Chen collected at least 16 women with superior credentials were rejected by Blackstone alone. Across all 14 contractors under investigation, we've identified 127 cases where female applicants with better qualifications than hired males were turned away. In 43 of those cases, the women had combat experience. The men who were hired instead did not. And these women are now employed. Many of them, yes. Thanks to Chief Brennan's placement efforts, 47 are currently deployed in security positions worldwide. Their performance ratings exceed industry averages. Client satisfaction is higher. Incident reports are lower. The data proves what should have been obvious all along. These women were always qualified. They were just never given the chance. At 16:20 hours, Davidson testified about the DoD's findings, the scope of the fraud, the national security implications. She was professional, thorough, devastating in her precision. When she finished, Hawkins had one final attempt. Colonel Davidson, all of this sounds very concerning, but I'm troubled by the speed with which this task force has operated. Arrests, contract suspensions, personnel replacements, all in less than 4 months. Don't you think that's rushed? Don't you think we risk throwing out the baby with the bathwater? Davidson's smile was cold. Senator, with respect, the bathwater was toxic. The baby was drowning. We didn't rush. We responded appropriately to an emergency situation where American personnel were being protected by unqualified contractors, where billions in taxpayer dollars were being fraudulently obtained, and where an entire demographic of qualified veterans was being systematically excluded from employment opportunities they'd earned. But surely not every contractor is corrupt. Surely not every hiring decision was discriminatory. You're right, Senator. Not every contractor is corrupt. We identified 14 out of approximately 40 major firms with active DoD contracts. That means 75% were operating legitimately, but it also means 25% were committing fraud on a massive scale. And every single firm we examined had problematic hiring patterns regarding female applicants. Every single one. That suggests a systemic cultural issue that transcends individual bad actors. So what's your recommendation? Comprehensive reform. New credentialing standards with independent verification, mandatory reporting of demographic hiring data, protection for whistleblowers, regular audits, and zero tolerance for fraud of any kind. Davidson paused. The alternative senator is continuing to allow an industry that protects our diplomats and trains our allies to operate with minimal oversight while excluding qualified personnel based on gender. I don't consider that acceptable. I hope this committee doesn't either. The hearing concluded at 17:10 hours. Hawkins announced the committee would review the evidence and reconvene in 1 week to vote on proposed reforms. As Vic gathered her materials, reporters swarmed. She pushed through them without comment, following Davidson and the others to a secure room where they could debrief. Catherine collapsed into a chair. That was worse than I expected. You did great, Vic told her. You didn't let them rattle you. I'm still shaking. Martinez was pacing, adrenaline clearly still pumping. Hawkins is going to fight the reforms. He made that clear. He'll use the week to pressure other senators to mobilize industry lobbying to undermine everything we presented. Let him try, Davidson said. We have public testimony on record now. We have evidence entered into the congressional record. Even if Hawkins blocks reforms, we've created a foundation for future action. Vic's phone rang. Morrison. Turn on CNN. Vic found a television switch to the news. The anchor was mid-sentence. Extraordinary testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee today, where investigators detailed massive fraud in the private military contractor industry. Perhaps most striking was this exchange between Senator Hawkins and retired Navy Chief Victoria Brennan. The screen showed Hawkins questioning Vic about her retirement, implying personal vendetta. Then it cut to Martinez's confrontation, her accusation about Hawkins's campaign donations, her passionate defense of the evidence. The anchor continued. Already 3 senators have announced they'll support comprehensive reforms. Senator Williams called the testimony compelling and disturbing. Senator Chen, no relation to witness. Catherine Chen said the evidence of discrimination was undeniable and unacceptable. And Senator Rodriguez announced he's introducing legislation to require independent credential verification for all defense contractors. Catherine was staring at the screen. We're actually going to win this. Maybe, Davidson cautioned. But the vote is still a week away. A lot can happen in a week. A lot did happen. Over the next 3 days, Vic received 47 interview requests, 19 speaking invitations, and approximately 200 emails from veterans thanking her for testifying. She also received 31 threats ranging from vague warnings to detailed descriptions of violence. Morrison assigned her security detail. 2 former Marines who shadowed her everywhere, professional and polite, but clearly prepared for trouble. On day 4, the Washington Post published an expose about Senator Hawkins's financial ties to the contractor industry. $2.3 million in campaign donations over 6 years from executives at 7 of the 14 contractors under investigation. The article raised questions about conflicts of interest about whether Hawkins should recuse himself from the vote. Hawkins responded with a press conference calling the article a politically motivated hit piece designed to distract from the real issue of government overreach. He doubled down on his opposition to reforms, calling them excessive regulation that will harm national security. On day 5, 3 more contractors voluntarily suspended operations and requested DoD audits to verify their personnel credentials. They'd apparently decided that getting ahead of investigations was smarter than waiting to be exposed. On day 6, Amanda Reeves called. Chief, I wanted to tell you personally, I'm in Baghdad working the job you placed me in. Today we prevented a vehicle-borne IED from reaching the embassy. 3 of us all-female veterans, all women who'd been rejected by contractors for being not the right fit. We saved lives today, and I wanted you to know that what you've done, it matters. It really matters. Vic felt something break in her chest, the emotional wall she'd maintained through the hearing finally cracking. Thank you for telling me that. No, thank you. Thank you for fighting for us when nobody else would. On day 7, the morning of the vote, Vic woke to an email from Commander Sullivan. Chief Brennan, I testified in closed session before the Senate Intelligence Committee yesterday about your service record. Told them everything I'm authorized to tell them, which admittedly isn't much. But I made damn sure they understood that every SEAL who trained under you came back better prepared, better equipped, and more likely to survive. I made sure they understood that the Navy made a mistake forcing you out. And I made sure they understood that questioning your credibility is questioning the credibility of every operator you trained, including me. The reforms will pass. They have to. Too many people are paying attention now. Well done, Chief. You made us all proud. Vic read the email 3 times, then called Davidson. What are our chances? 50-50. Maybe 60-40 in our favor. Williams has the votes from progressives. Rodriguez has moderates. But Hawkins is pressuring Republicans hard. It's going to be close. And if we lose, then we keep fighting. Through legislation, through executive action, through public pressure. This doesn't end with one vote. The Senate Armed Services Committee convened at 1,000 hours. The vote was scheduled for 1,400 hours after final debate. Vic watched from the gallery with Catherine and Martinez. The debate was predictable. Supporters cited evidence, spoke about accountability and integrity. Opponents raised concerns about over-regulation, about harming the industry, about solving problems that didn't exist. Senator Hawkins spoke last, and his words were carefully chosen. I don't dispute that some contractors made mistakes. I don't dispute that some executives may have acted inappropriately. But the reforms proposed today would fundamentally restructure an industry that serves a vital national security function. They would impose regulatory burdens that could drive contractors out of business, leaving critical gaps in our defense posture. They would prioritize social engineering over operational effectiveness. And they're based largely on the testimony of witnesses with clear bias against the industry they're investigating. He looked directly at the gallery, directly at Vic. Chief Brennan is undoubtedly a skilled operator, but she's also someone who left the Navy under contentious circumstances after filing harassment complaints. Captain Martinez lost a friend and is understandably emotional. Ms. Chen has family connections to one of the contractors investigated. Are these the objective sources we should base major policy decisions on? Williams stood immediately. Senator Hawkins attacking witnesses' character doesn't change the evidence. We have documentation of fraud. We have proof of discrimination. We have dead Americans who were failed by a system that prioritized profit over competence. Are you seriously suggesting we ignore all of that because you don't like the people who brought it to our attention? I'm suggesting we approach this thoughtfully, not reactively. We've had 4 months of investigation, thousands of pages of evidence and testimony from dozens of sources. How is that reactive? The debate continued for another hour. Then at 14:02 hours, the committee chair called for the vote. The room went silent. One by one, senators stated their positions. Williams, aye. Rodriguez, aye. Chen, aye. Hawkins, nay. The votes piled up. 12 ayes, 8 nays, 2 abstentions. The reforms passed. The gallery erupted in applause. Catherine was crying. Martinez was shouting. Even Davidson allowed herself a small smile. Vic sat perfectly still, letting the reality sink in. They'd won. After everything, after all the resistance and threats and attempts to discredit them, they'd actually won. Outside the hearing room, reporters mobbed them immediately. Vic made a brief statement. Today, the Senate Armed Services Committee voted to protect American personnel, to hold contractors accountable, and to ensure that qualified veterans get opportunities they've earned regardless of gender. This is a victory for integrity over profit, for competence over prejudice, for justice over convenience. But the real work starts now. Implementing these reforms, ensuring compliance, changing a culture that's resisted change for decades. That's going to take sustained effort, sustained vigilance, and sustained courage from everyone involved. A reporter shouted a question. Chief Brennan, Senator Hawkins called you biased. How do you respond? I respond by pointing to the evidence, by pointing to the 47 women currently deployed protecting American interests worldwide, by pointing to the audits that have verified credential fraud at multiple contractors. My bias, if you want to call it that, is toward truth and accountability. I make no apologies for that. What's next for you? Vic glanced at Davidson, who nodded slightly. I'll continue leading the DoD task force implementing these reforms. We'll conduct additional audits, develop new standards, and ensure that the changes voted on today actually translate into real-world improvements. This isn't a one-time fix, it's an ongoing commitment. That night, Vic sat in her hotel room reviewing the day's events. Her phone had been ringing non-stop. Congratulations from colleagues, interview requests from media, thank you messages from veterans. One message stood out, from Marcus Chen. Chief, I watched the vote today. Watched you testify last week. I wanted to tell you that you changed my life, not just my career, my life. You showed me what real courage looks like, what real integrity costs. My new company got our first DoD contract approval today. Small job training Army reservists. But it's a start. And I promise you every person I hire will be hired based on qualifications, nothing else. Thank you for making me better. Thank you for making all of us better. Vic closed her laptop, turned off her phone, and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The victory was real. The reforms would make a difference. Lives would be saved, careers would be built, a broken system would be forced to change. But she knew this wasn't the end. Hawkins had allies. The industry had resources. Resistance would continue, maybe intensify. Tomorrow she'd start implementing reforms, conducting audits, holding people accountable. Tomorrow the hard work would begin. But tonight, just for a few hours, she let herself believe that justice could win. That truth could prevail. That one person armed with evidence and courage and absolute refusal to quit could change a system that had seemed unchangeable. She thought about the young woman she'd been 25 years ago joining the Navy with dreams of serving her country. She thought about everything that had happened since. The missions, the injuries, the harassment, the forced retirement. And she thought about where she was now. Leading a task force, implementing reforms, changing lives. Maybe all of it, the good and the bad, had been preparation for this moment. Maybe every battle she'd fought, every compromise she'd refused, every time she'd stood up when it would have been easier to sit down had been leading here. To a Senate hearing room where truth finally mattered more than power. To a vote that chose integrity over convenience. To a victory that proved one stubborn woman with a rifle and a conscience could actually make a difference. She slept without nightmares that night. For the first time in years, she slept like someone who'd finally completed the mission. The peace lasted exactly 36 hours. Vic was in her temporary DoD office reviewing implementation timelines when Morrison called at 06:47 hours on a Saturday morning. We've got a situation. Turn on Fox News. The screen showed Senator Hawkins at a press conference flanked by 3 men in expensive suits. The caption identified them as CEOs of major defense contractors. Yesterday, I filed a lawsuit challenging the Senate Armed Services Committee's authority to impose these so-called reforms, Hawkins was saying. These regulations represent government overreach of the most egregious kind. They will cripple an industry that protects American interests worldwide, cost thousands of jobs, and ultimately harm our national security. This lawsuit has the backing of industry leaders, congressional allies, and constitutional law experts who agree that the committee exceeded its mandate. A reporter shouted a question. Senator, critics say you're protecting contractors who defrauded taxpayers and endangered American lives. How do you respond? I respond by saying that allegations are not convictions, that investigation is not proof, and that we don't destroy entire industries based on the testimony of a handful of disgruntled individuals with obvious axes to grind. Vic turned off the television, already reaching for her phone. Davidson answered on the first ring. I saw it. Legal is already analyzing the lawsuit. It's weak, but it'll tie us up in court for months, maybe years. Can they win? Probably not. But they can delay implementation, create uncertainty, pressure senators to back down. That might be enough. So what do? We keep moving forward, conduct audits, implement standards, make the reforms real before the courts can stop us. Make it too costly to undo what we've started. Over the next week, Vic threw herself into implementation with the intensity of someone running out of time. She conducted 12 facility audits, identified 43 more cases of credential fraud, and personally interviewed 37 female veterans for contractor positions. On day 9, Marcus Chen's new company passed its first major audit with perfect scores. He called Vic immediately. "We did it. Clean bill of health. DOD just approved us for a $4.2 million training contract. Congratulations, you earned it." "No, Vic, you earned it. You forced me to build something better. You showed me what integrity actually costs." He paused. "I hired 6 of the women you referred. All of them are exceptional. I don't know how the industry overlooked them for so long." "The industry didn't overlook them. It deliberately excluded them. There's a difference." "Yeah, there is. And I was part of that system. I'm sorry it took you showing up to make me see it. You saw it eventually. That matters." On day 12, Amanda Reeves sent a photo from Baghdad. Her team, all female veterans standing in front of the embassy they'd protected. The caption read, "They said we weren't qualified. They said we couldn't handle it. They were wrong." Vic stared at that photo for a long time, feeling the weight of what they'd accomplished. These women were doing jobs they should have been doing all along. Jobs they'd earned through service and sacrifice and competence that had been ignored until someone forced the system to acknowledge it. On day 15, the first major challenge hit. Catherine called at 21:34 hours, her voice urgent. "Vic, we have a problem. One of the women we placed, Sarah Kim, the helicopter pilot. She's being accused of falsifying her credentials." Vic's blood went cold. "That's impossible. We verified everything twice." "I know. But Titan Defense Solutions is claiming her flight certifications were fabricated. They're demanding her immediate removal from the contract and threatening to use this as evidence that our entire placement process is flawed." "Who at Titan is making these claims?" "CEO, Michael Bradford. He's one of the guys who was standing with Hawkins at that press conference." "So this is retaliation?" "Probably. But if we can't disprove it, if Kim's credentials turn out to have any irregularities, it undermines everything we've done." Vic was already pulling up Kim's file on her laptop. Every certification was documented, verified through official channels, cross-referenced with Navy records. "Get me Bradford's contact information. I'm calling him tonight." "Vic, it's after 2100 hours. "I don't care what time it is. He accused one of my people of fraud. He gets to explain that to me personally." She reached Bradford at 21:58 hours. His voice was smooth, confident, the tone of someone who'd never faced real consequences. "Chief Brennan, I wondered when I'd hear from you. You're claiming Sarah Kim's certifications are fake. Explain." "I'm claiming we have evidence suggesting irregularities in her documentation. Evidence we're obligated to report to DOD." "What evidence?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss details of an ongoing investigation." "Convenient. You make public accusations but won't back them up with specifics. That sounds like defamation, Mr. Bradford." "It sounds like due diligence. Unlike your task force, we actually verify credentials before placing personnel in critical positions." Vic felt her temper rising but kept her voice level. "Kim's credentials have been verified by the Navy, by DOD, and by 3 independent auditing firms. If you have evidence contradicting that, produce it. Otherwise, retract your accusation. Or what, you'll arrest me like you arrested Richard Vance. You'll destroy my company like you destroyed Blackstone." Bradford's tone hardened. "I don't respond well to threats, Chief, and neither does the rest of this industry. You've made a lot of enemies. Maybe it's time you learned what that costs." "I've had enemies before. I'm still here. They're not." "We'll see about that. Enjoy the lawsuit, Chief. Enjoy watching everything you built fall apart in court." He hung up. Vic immediately called Morrison. "Bradford at Titan is fabricating allegations against Sarah Kim to undermine the placement program. We need to get ahead of this." "Already on it. Legal pulled Kim's complete service record 30 minutes ago. Everything checks out. Every certification is legitimate, documented, verified. Bradford's allegation is baseless." "Then why make it?" "To create doubt. To make it look like we're placing unqualified people just to hit gender quotas. If they can discredit one placement, they can question all of them. So we release Kim's records publicly, show everyone Bradford's lying." "We can't. Kim's records include classified mission details. We release them, we compromise operational security. Bradford knows that. He's betting we won't call his bluff. Vic felt the trap closing. What if Kim releases her own records? She can authorize disclosure of her own service history. She could, but that would expose details about her military career she might prefer to keep private, and it requires her to defend herself against false accusations instead of just doing her job. It's not fair to her. None of this is fair to her, but it's her choice. Let me talk to her. She reached Kim 4 hours later. It was 0300 hours in Baghdad, but Kim was awake, already aware of the accusations. Chief, I heard what Titan's saying. It's bullshit. Every certification I have is legitimate. I know, and we can prove it. But proving it means releasing your service records publicly. It means exposing details about your deployments, your missions, potentially your personal life. I won't ask you to do that unless you're comfortable with it. Kim was quiet for a moment. What happens if I don't release them? Bradford's accusation stands unchallenged. It creates doubt about your qualifications, about our placement process, about the reforms we're implementing. It gives ammunition to everyone trying to undo what we've accomplished. And if I do release them, the truth comes out. Your credentials are verified publicly. Bradford gets exposed as a liar, but your privacy is gone. Everything you did in the Navy becomes public record. Another long pause. Then Kim's voice came back steady and certain. Release them. All of them. I've got nothing to hide, and I'm not letting some CEO destroy our credibility because he's scared of competition from qualified women. Sarah, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. These accusations aren't just about me. They're about every woman you've placed, every woman who's still waiting for opportunities. If Bradford thinks he can intimidate us by attacking one person, he needs to learn he picked the wrong person. Vic felt pride surge through her chest. Okay, I'll coordinate with Morrison. We'll have your full service record released through official channels by tomorrow morning. Good. And Chief, thank you for asking instead of just deciding. Some commanders would have thrown me under the bus to protect the mission. You are the mission, Sarah. All of you are. That's the whole point of what we're doing. The next morning, Morrison released Kim's complete service record through a DoD press conference. The documents were devastating to Bradford's claims. Not only were Kim's certifications legitimate, they were exceptional. She'd flown combat missions in 3 theaters, had logged over 2,000 flight hours in hostile environments, had received 2 air medals and a Distinguished Flying Cross. The press ran with it immediately. Defense contractor CEO falsely accused decorated pilot, read the Washington Post headline. Titan Defense Solutions under investigation for defamation, reported the Wall Street Journal. Bradford issued a terse statement claiming he'd received flawed intelligence and withdrew the accusation. But the damage to his credibility was done. Hawkins tried to capitalize on the incident anyway, claiming it showed the task force was overly aggressive in defending questionable placements. But when reporters pointed out that Kim's credentials had been independently verified by multiple sources, he backed off. The lawsuit continued, but momentum was shifting. On day 21, 3 more contractors voluntarily adopted the new credentialing standards rather than risk audit failures. On day 25, the House Armed Services Committee announced its own investigation into contractor fraud, citing the Senate's findings as a foundation. On day 30, something unexpected happened. Vic was conducting an audit at a facility in North Carolina when the site supervisor, a former Army Ranger named Thomas Garrett, pulled her aside. "Chief, I need to talk to you privately." They stepped into an empty office. Garrett looked uncomfortable, conflicted. "I was at Blackstone 5 years ago. I was one of the guys who helped create the culture you're trying to destroy." Vic said nothing, waited. "We convinced ourselves we were protecting standards, maintaining operational effectiveness. We told ourselves that women couldn't handle the physical demands, the stress, the reality of high-threat environments. We rejected qualified female applicants and didn't think twice about it because we believed we were right." What changed? "I watched your placement results. Watched women like Amanda Reeves and Sarah Kim excel in exactly the positions we'd convinced ourselves they couldn't handle. Watched their performance metrics exceed our male operators. Watch them prove everything we believed was wrong. He met her eyes. I was an idiot. We all were. And I'm telling you this because I want to help fix what I helped break. How? I'm training the next generation of security contractors. Hundreds of them pass through this facility every year. Let me help develop new training protocols. Let me teach them that competence doesn't have a gender. Let me make sure the culture I helped create dies with my generation instead of getting passed to the next one. Vic studied him carefully. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. Not yet. I have to earn that. But give me the chance to try. Let me be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. She thought about Marcus Chen, about the choice he'd made to change, about the fact that systems didn't transform without people within those systems choosing to be different. All right. You'll work directly with Catherine Chen on developing new training standards. You'll document everything you know about how discriminatory practices were institutionalized, and you'll testify if needed about what you witnessed. Agreed. And Garrett, if you're not genuine about this, if you're trying to sabotage from the inside, I will find out, and it will end badly for you. I'm genuine. I promise you that. Over the next 6 weeks, Garrett proved himself. He provided detailed documentation of discriminatory practices, testified before congressional investigators, and worked with Catherine to develop training protocols that emphasized merit-based evaluation regardless of demographic factors. The lawsuit dragged on, but the reforms kept advancing. More contractors adopted new standards. More women were placed in positions they'd earned. The culture was shifting slowly but undeniably. On day 63, Martinez called with news. The FBI just arrested Michael Bradford. Turns out while he was accusing Sarah Kim of credential fraud, he was actually committing it himself. 18 of his Tier 1 operators had fabricated backgrounds, and he knew. Emails prove he knew. How long will he get? Federal prosecutor is talking 8 to 12 years. Maybe more if they can prove he knowingly endangered personnel by deploying unqualified contractors. Good. Vic, we're winning. Really winning. Not just in court, but in the real world. The industry is changing because it has to, because we made it impossible for them to keep doing business the old way. Vic wanted to celebrate, wanted to feel the victory fully, but 63 days of constant pressure, constant fighting, constant vigilance had left her exhausted. How many more battles do we have to fight before this is really done? I don't know. Maybe it's never really done. Maybe this is just what justice looks like. Constant effort, constant vigilance, constant refusal to accept systems that don't work. That night, Vic received an email from Commander Sullivan. Chief, I'm retiring next month. 28 years in the Navy, ending on my own terms, which is more than you got. I wanted you to know that my final assignment is establishing new SEAL training protocols. Protocols that will officially incorporate women into all phases of BUDS and advanced training. The Navy is finally acknowledging publicly what you proved privately 2 decades ago. Women can do this job. They should do this job, and they'll do it well. You paved this road, Vic. Every woman who makes it through SEAL training from now on owes you a debt they'll probably never know about. But I know. We all know. Thank you for being stubborn enough to refuse to quit, even when quitting would have been easier. Semper Fi, Sullivan. Vic read the email 3 times, feeling emotions she'd kept buried for years finally surface. The anger at being forced out. The grief at losing a career she'd loved. The satisfaction of knowing that sacrifice had meant something. She called Sarah Torres. Remember when you told me I'd done enough that I could walk away and let someone else fight these battles? I remember. You were wrong. Sarah laughed. Yeah, I was, but I had to try. The Navy is integrating women into SEAL training, officially, publicly. Sullivan just told me. Because of you. Because of all of us. Because enough people refused to accept that exclusion was acceptable. Because we documented the failures, exposed the fraud, forced institutions to confront their own hypocrisy. So what now? You've changed the contractor industry, influenced SEAL training policy, placed dozens of women in careers they'd earned. What's left? Vic thought about that question, about what came next for someone who'd spent the past 4 months fighting every day, who'd built her identity around this mission. I don't know, she admitted. but I'll figure it out. 3 days later, she got a call from the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Chief Brennan, your contract with the task force is up for renewal. I'd like to discuss expanding your role. Expanding how? The reforms you've implemented for contractors need to be applied across the entire defense industry. Civilian employees, military personnel, contractor oversight. We're talking about comprehensive cultural transformation. It's going to take years. We need someone to lead that effort. Someone who can't be bought, can't be intimidated, and won't quit. Someone like you. Vic felt the weight of what was being offered. Years more of this work. Years more of fighting, documenting, forcing change on systems that resisted it. She thought about Amanda Reeves in Baghdad, Sarah Kim flying missions, Catherine Chen reforming training standards, Martinez exposing fraud, Marcus Chen building better companies. She thought about all the women still waiting for opportunities, still being told they weren't good enough, still fighting battles that shouldn't need to be fought. I'll do it, she said. On one condition. Name it. I want authority to expand this beyond just contractors, military academies, promotion boards, assignment processes, every place where gender discrimination is hiding behind tradition and institutional inertia. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. Agreed. When can you start? I already started. 4 months ago, when I walked into Blackstone for an evaluation, I knew it was designed to fail me. I'm just making it official now. 6 months after that first day at Blackstone, Vic stood in front of a packed auditorium at the Naval Academy, invited to speak to midshipmen about leadership and integrity. She looked out at the young faces, male and female, all of them preparing for careers in service, all of them navigating systems that were better than they'd been, but still not what they should be. 25 years ago, I stood where you're standing now, full of idealism, full of determination, absolutely certain that competence and dedication would be enough. I was wrong. Competence and dedication are necessary, but they're not sufficient. You also need courage. The courage to challenge systems that are broken. The courage to speak truth to power even when power doesn't want to hear it. The courage to refuse to accept that this is just how things are. She paused, making eye contact with a young woman in the third row who was watching with fierce attention. Some of you will face discrimination. Some of you will be told you don't belong, that you can't handle it, that you should accept limitations others place on you. When that happens, you have a choice. You can accept those limitations, or you can prove them wrong so thoroughly, so undeniably, that they can never make those assumptions about the people who come after you. After the speech, the young woman from the third row approached. Ma'am, I'm Midshipman Brennan, Jessica Brennan. I heard about what you did with the contractor reforms. I wanted to thank you. My mom was Army pushed out after reporting harassment. She never got justice. But watching what you accomplished, seeing someone actually hold people accountable, it gave her hope. Gave me hope. So thank you. Vic felt tears threaten for the first time in months. What's your specialty? Aviation. I want to fly combat missions. Be the first woman to make carrier landings under fire. My instructors say I'm not aggressive enough. They say women don't have the right temperament for combat aviation. And what do you say? Jessica smiled. I say they haven't seen what I can do yet, but they will. Good. And when they try to hold you back, when they try to tell you that you can't remember that 30 years of people told me the same thing, I'm still here, they're not. Stubbornness is a tactical advantage, midshipman. Use it. That night, Vic sat in her apartment reviewing files for the next phase of the cultural transformation project. Hundreds of cases to investigate, thousands of policies to reform, decades of institutional inertia to overcome. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like purpose. Her phone rang. Catherine Chen. Vic, I just got the final audit results from all 14 contractors. Want to hear the numbers? Hit me. 83% reduction in credential fraud, 71% increase in female contractor employment, 94% improvement in qualification verification processes, and client satisfaction ratings are up across the board. We did it, Vic. We actually changed the industry. We started changing it. There's still work to do. There's always work to do, but tonight, just for tonight, can we celebrate the fact that we won? That we took on billion-dollar companies and entrenched corruption and senators who wanted us silenced, and we won. Vic smiled. Yeah, tonight we can celebrate. She hung up, poured herself a small glass of whiskey, and raised it toward the window. To everyone who said it couldn't be done, you were wrong. 3 months later, Vic was conducting an audit at a facility in San Diego when she encountered someone unexpected. Jake, the young operations specialist from that first day at Blackstone. He was working as an instructor now, teaching new contractors about ethical practices and credential verification. Chief Brennan, I wasn't sure you'd remember me. I remember everyone from that day, Jake. I wanted to apologize for how we treated you, for the comments, for assuming you weren't qualified. It was wrong. And I've spent the past 9 months trying to make sure I never treat anyone that way again. That's all anyone can do. Recognize the mistake and choose to be better. I'm teaching now, ethics and compliance. I tell every class about you, about how a 52-year-old woman walked into our facility and exposed everything that was wrong with how we operated, about how we dismissed you based on age and gender and were absolutely wrong. I use you as an example of why assumptions are dangerous and why competence doesn't look like we expect it to. Vic felt something shift in her chest. This was what victory looked like. Not just policy changes and reformed regulations. Changed minds, changed behaviors, changed culture. Keep teaching Jake. The next generation needs to learn these lessons before they make the same mistakes we did. We didn't make those mistakes, ma'am. You didn't. We did. People like me who thought we knew better but didn't actually know anything. And then teach them what you learned. That's how systems change. One instructor, one classroom, one student at a time. A year after the Senate vote, Vic testified again. This time before the House Armed Services Committee, presenting comprehensive data on cultural transformation across the defense industry. The numbers told the story. Discrimination complaints down 68%. Female employment up 53%. Credential fraud down 81%. Contractor performance ratings at all-time highs. But the real story was in the faces. Amanda Reeves, now running a security team in Kabul. Sarah Kim, training the next generation of combat pilots. Catherine Chen, appointed as DoD's Chief Compliance Officer. Martinez leading the FBI's Contractor Fraud Task Force. Marcus Chen building a company that proved ethical practices and profitability weren't mutually exclusive. Representative Jackson, a freshman congresswoman from Texas, asked the final question. Chief Brennan, you've spent 18 months transforming an industry that many said couldn't be changed. What drives you? What keeps you fighting when it would be easier to quit? Vic thought about that question, about the young woman she'd been joining the Navy with dreams, about the scarred veteran she'd become forced out for refusing to stay silent, about the investigator she'd transformed into, determined to fix what had broken her. I fight because someone has to, because systems don't change themselves, because every woman who comes after me deserves better than I got, and because I made a promise to myself 20 years ago when the Navy forced me to retire. I promised that I wouldn't let them win. That I wouldn't let institutional cowardice and entrenched prejudice be the final word on my career or anyone else's. This work, these reforms, this transformation, it's me keeping that promise. And I'll keep fighting until the promise is fulfilled or I'm dead, whichever comes first. The room was silent. Then Jackson nodded slowly. Thank you, Chief, for your service, for your courage, and for refusing to quit even when quitting would have been justified. 2 years after assembling that Mech-13 sniper rifle in under 3 minutes, Vic received an invitation to the Naval Special Warfare Command Change of Command ceremony. The new commander wanted her there personally. She attended in civilian clothes, standing in the back watching as leadership transitioned. When the ceremony concluded, the new commander approached her directly. Chief Brennan, I'm Commander Rachel Torres. I'm the first woman to command a SEAL team. That happened because of reforms you influenced, because of doors you forced open, because of battles you fought, when nobody was watching and nobody cared, except the people you were protecting. I wanted to thank you personally. Vic looked at this woman, this SEAL commander, this symbol of change that had seemed impossible just years ago. You earned this command, Commander. Your qualifications, your service, your leadership. Don't give me credit for what you achieved. I earned it, but you made it possible for the Navy to recognize what I'd earned. There's a difference. Torres extended her hand. The door was locked. You kicked it down. Now it's my job to make sure it stays open for everyone coming behind me. They shook hands, and Vic felt something she hadn't felt in years. Closure. The sense that the battles she'd fought had meant something beyond her own career, beyond her own vindication. She'd changed the system that had broken her, and in doing so she'd made sure it couldn't break the people coming next. That night, Vic sat in her apartment, now permanent instead of temporary, reviewing the next quarter's agenda. More audits, more reforms, more institutions, resisting change that needed to be forced on them anyway. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Chief Brennan? Chief, this is Midshipman Jessica Brennan. We met at the Naval Academy last year. I remember. How's flight school? Challenging, intense, exactly what I hoped it would be. Jessica paused. I called because I wanted you to know I got my first carrier landing qualified yesterday. My instructors said I was too cautious, too uncertain. I proved them wrong. Vic smiled. Congratulations. That's not an easy qualification to earn. No, it's not. But you taught me something important that day we met. You taught me that being underestimated is a tactical advantage, that people who dismiss you give you the element of surprise, that proving someone wrong is sometimes more satisfying than being right from the start. That's a hard-learned lesson. I'm still learning it, but I'm learning. Jessica's voice strengthened. I wanted to call and tell you that I'm not quitting. No matter how hard they make it, no matter how many times they question whether I belong, I'm not quitting. Because you didn't quit. And if you could fight for 20 years against a system that didn't want you, I can handle flight school instructors who think women can't fly. You're going to be an exceptional pilot, Jessica. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. After she hung up, Vic sat in the quiet apartment feeling the weight of legacy. Not the legacy of medals she couldn't wear or commendations she couldn't discuss. The legacy of changed minds and open doors and women who would never know her name but would benefit from battles she'd fought. That was enough. More than enough. She thought about that first day at Blackstone, walking into a facility designed to reject her carrying credentials that should have been sufficient but weren't, because the system valued conformity over competence. She thought about Marcus and Chad, and Jake smirking at the old woman who thought she could teach them anything. She thought about the MK-13 sniper rifle disassembled on the table, the challenge designed to expose her inadequacy. And she thought about the moment everything changed. The moment her hands found the components, and muscle memory took over, and 3 young men realized they'd catastrophically underestimated the woman standing in front of them. I only need 3 minutes, she'd said. She'd needed 3 minutes to assemble the rifle. She'd needed 18 months to dismantle an industry's corruption. She'd needed 2 years to force institutional transformation. And she'd needed every single second of 25 years of service sacrifice and stubborn refusal to quit to be ready for the moment when it all mattered. They'd jeered at her body, dismissed her age, assumed her incompetence. And she'd proven them wrong so thoroughly, so completely, so undeniably, that they had no choice but to change or be destroyed. Some chose change, some chose destruction. Either way, the system transformed. Victoria Brennan stood at her window looking out at the lights of Washington, D.C., at the buildings where policies were made and futures were decided, at the infrastructure of power she'd forced to acknowledge her existence. She'd been told she couldn't. She'd been told she shouldn't. She'd been told to accept limitations, to know her place, to be grateful for whatever scraps the system decided to throw her. Instead, she'd taken that MK-13 sniper rifle, assembled it in under 3 minutes, and used it as a weapon, not against enemies abroad, but against corruption at home. And she'd won. Not because she was stronger, though she was strong. Not because she was smarter, though she was smart. But because she was more stubborn than the system was entrenched, more determined than the resistance was powerful, more committed to justice than her enemies were to preserving injustice. 25 years after joining the Navy, 4 years after forced retirement, 18 months after walking into Blackstone Security Solutions for an evaluation designed to humiliate her, Victoria Brennan had done what they said couldn't be done. She'd changed the world by refusing to accept it as it was. And every woman who came after her, every qualified veteran who got opportunities she'd been denied, every midshipman who pursued dreams without arbitrary limitations, every system that had to reform because someone finally forced it to all of them, were proof that one person with a rifle, a conscience, and absolute refusal to quit could actually make a difference. They'd mocked her age. They'd dismissed her gender. They'd underestimated everything about her. And she'd made them regret every single assumption. That was victory. That was justice. That was legacy. And it was only the beginning.